21st, 2025. Keep in mind these meetings are being televised live for the benefit of our residents who cannot attend in person. And the February 18th regular meeting was canceled due to inclement weather, and it was rescheduled for this evening. This time we'll have invocation. I'm going to ask Director Neil Martin to lead the invocation and Director Christina Cassavage to lead us in the pledge.
Let's pray. Father, we're blessed to be here tonight, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity to do the business of the city of Fort Smith. Lord, be with all of us that are in this room, all those that are watching online. Lord, I pray that you would give us wisdom. I pray that you would guide us in our words and our thoughts. Lord, and I pray that ultimately we're doing things that honor you. But Lord, we're praying for the city of Fort Smith. We pray for prosperity. We pray for growth. We pray for unity. And so, Father, I just pray that you would guide us tonight. Be with those that have come to the board to speak to us. Lord, I pray that there be a spirit of togetherness, to unity. Lord, I pray that we all work together to better our city and our community. Father, we love you. We thank you, and we ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. This time we'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Directors Rigo.
Here.
Good.
Here.
Kemp.
Here.
George Katsavas.
Here.
Christina Katsavas.
Here.
Settle.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Okay, thank you. This time I'll ask if any board member has an item of business that's not already on the agenda. Okay, thank you. This time we'll ask for approval of the minutes of the February 4th, 2025 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, let's see, we're not going to have, okay. Kind of looking forward to the Girl Scouts, but they're not here tonight.
They're coming next week.
They're coming later. Okay, with that, we'll go to the first item on the agenda. Mr. Dingman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 1 is an ordinance recognizing the rescheduling of the February 18th meeting to this evening, since the board meeting schedule is set by ordinance and ordinance is required to amend it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any citizens' comments on that item?
None indicating.
Motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rule.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance to ratify and confirm the cancellation and rescheduling of the November 4th, 2024. Wait a minute. That's not right. The rescheduling of the February 18th regular meeting to February 21.
Okay, if there are no board comments, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, we'll go to item number 2.
Item 2 is an ordinance adjusting rates for services of the sanitary sewer system. As highlighted at the February 4th public hearing, the city's administration, finance, and utility staff recommend usage rates for the sanitary sewer system be amended, both to satisfy operating requirements and also comply with the 10-year financial plan for accomplishing the capital projects required for consent decree compliance that the city proposed to the Department of Justice and EPA last fall. Administration, finance, and utility staff are available this evening to respond to any further questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments?
None indicating.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt the ordinance with suspension of the rules.
So moved. Suspension of the rules.
Second.
Thank you. Please read the ordinance.
An ordinance to provide for rates for services of the sanitary sewer system and superseding ordinances in conflict therewith.
Thank you. Are there any board member comments on this item? Okay. Now please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
No.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Item number 3.
This item is a resolution that was discussed at the February 4th meeting regarding a proposed redevelopment of an existing structure near the airport into a climatized mini-storage facility. Deputy City Administrator Maggie Rice will further address this item.
Yes, on January 14th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider taking 4401 Savannah Street and turning that warehouse into a 437-unit climatized mini-storage warehouse facility. Section 27709 of the Unified Development Ordinance sets design guidelines for mini-storage warehouse land uses. The new development currently complies with the required high-quality building materials, roofline pitches, and wall insets for the south and east facades, as well as the required mechanical and trash receptacle screening. However, the north and west facades do not comply with the minimum required high-quality materials, the roofline pitches, or wall insets as required by the code. The Board of Zoning Adjustment did review and approve variances for those items. A neighborhood meeting was held on January 6th. There was no neighboring property owners that attended. At the Planning Commission meeting, Ms. Michelle Dodro was present to represent these applications. There were none present to speak in favor or opposition. The Planning Commission voted 7 in favor with 0 opposed to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the development plan. And the Board of Directors tabled this item at the February 4th regular meeting pending military approval, and that military approval did come, so there are no concerns from the military because of the proximity of this location to the airport. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the applicant is here to address the board, Michelle Dodro.
Okay, thank you for being here, Michelle.
Because she is the applicant, they are afforded 5 minutes for presentation.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other citizens' comments, we need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any board comments? Director Settle, you're recognized.
Maggie, I'd like to thank you and your team for investigating this. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, please call the roll.
Directors Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, we'll go to item 4.
Item 4 covers the second and third elements of the 10-year financial plan for consent decree compliance that the city submitted to the DOJ, EPA last fall, namely the referring to voters of the city a proposal to issue sales and use tax bonds to fund capital projects required for consent decree compliance, and also to approve, redistribute, and renew the local portion of the local sales taxes to provide the debt service to pay the sales and use tax bonds. As the board requested at the February 4th meeting, there are 2 directions presented this evening from which the board should choose one. This set of ordinances and resolutions identified as Tract A would keep the total local sales tax rate at 9.5% on every dollar spent in the city. The set of ordinances and resolutions identified as Tract B would increase the local sales tax rate to 9.875% on every dollar spent. Both Tract A and Tract B propose the issuance of $360 million in sales and use tax bonds to pay for the consent decree and wastewater projects, including the required 5% debt service reserve and the cost of issuance. This requires a total issue of up to $385 million. These funds are vital to accomplishing the capital projects needed to comply with the consent decree, and the financial plan presented to the DOJ and EPA includes the issuance of these bonds, recognizing that palatable increases to sewer usage rates will not fund the required projects. Both Tract A and Tract B also propose the reauthorization of the sales tax approved by voters in 2022 and specifically authorizes the 5/8 cent portion of that sales tax to be used for debt service on the capital project bonds mentioned above. Page 2. Both Tract A and Tract B also propose the renewal of the 1 cent sales tax that has been in place since 1985 to fund improvements to the city's streets, bridges, and stormwater drainage systems. This 1 cent sales tax was overwhelmingly reauthorized by voters in 1995, 2005, and 2015, and the proceeds from this sales tax are used for street overlays, street construction, bridge repairs, storm drainage, and flash flood mitigation. Where Tract A and Tract B are different is that in Tract A, voters would be asked to divert 3/8 of that renewed 1 cent streets, bridges, drainage sales tax to be used for debt service on the bonds mentioned earlier for consent decree and wastewater capital projects. This does reduce the funds available to continue street and drainage work at the pace to which residents have become accustomed, and prioritizes the importance of funding consent decree capital projects. This approach in Tract A keeps the total sales tax paid locally at the current 9.5%. Alternatively, Tract B asks voters to renew the 1 cent sales tax for streets, bridges, and drainage for another 10-year period, and also asks voters to approve a new 3/8 cent sales and use tax to be specifically used for debt service on the $385 million bond issue mentioned earlier. As a result, Tract B results in an increased total local sales tax to 9.875%. In either case, whichever tract the board chooses needs to be approved and authorized so that the city can forward the ordinances to Sebastian County before March the 4th, so the appropriate questions can be placed on the ballot for the May 13th, 2025 special election. Finance, utilities, and administration staff are available for questions related to this process, and Mr. Shep Russell, our bond counsel from Friday, Eldridge & Clark, is in attendance via Teams connection.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments on item 4A or 4B?
Yes, we do have, looks like 4 that have signed in to speak, and first being Crystal Cadelli, who will have 2 minutes.
I would ask that this board go back to the drawing table and review the 2025 budget. I think that there are a lot of non-essential projects that can be put on hold that can be used for the consent decree. We have almost $7 million worth of park projects this year that I think could, the contracts haven't been signed, can be put on hold and be utilized. I don't think that we should be using the street tax for consent decree. I read an article back in 2019 where the city had requested money for the flood because it washed out some streets, and we were denied the funds because it was pre-existing. So we had to pay for that because our streets are not in the condition that they need to be in. So I think taking away from that budget is a really bad idea. I think where we need to be looking is at our parks, and I think that we're going to have a sewer increase, or we're going to have a tax increase, but I don't think the citizens can afford both. And I'll be honest, I don't think that we can really afford one, but I know that something is going to have to be done. I looked back, and the minimal water increase in 6 months was a $5 million revenue increase. $5 million in 6 months. That means $10 million. Over $2 million coming just from the citizens of Fort Smith. So you're asking us to pay $4 million more just in water, and then you're going to increase our sewage. I have an email from Carl back in October, and nothing has changed from his plan that you're offering today. So I would ask for this board to go back to the drawing table and come up with something good that is going to benefit the citizens.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next we have Chris Cadelli.
Good evening. Yeah, I think this is going to be a real big ask coming to the voters here in Fort Smith to request a tax hike of any amount on top of the dramatic water rates that we've already been hit with. And then, of course, the coming sewer rate increases on top of that. And this all takes into account the fact that, you know, here in Arkansas, we rank third highest in the nation on average for combined state and local tax rates. So, you know, the tax burden is already significant when you compare us to comparable city and states around the country. We're already given more, and we're really getting less in return. Additionally, asking for approval to divert funds from the vital streets, bridges, and drainage department is really a bad idea based on, you know, kind of what Crystal already mentioned. I mean, this is a vital infrastructure department. You know, everybody in the city depends on quality streets. And we know, you know, based on history, how serious drainage issues here in Fort Smith can be evidence of the fact that we always have, you know, flooding issues after a moderate to heavy rain event. I would encourage you to ask the voters for, I would encourage you not to ask the voters to divert those funds from the city and the streets, bridges, and drainage department. On the flip side of that, you know, I think that you should take a look at the parks budget. You know, that tax, I think, you could go to the voters and say it may make sense at, you know, at a time like now to do that and divert those funds. So, yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Danny McLemore.
I just got a really quick question for each and every one of you. What are you doing? I mean, really. You want to take money from our streets when they're already tore up. Okay? That ain't going to fly. They're going to continue to fall apart. You ain't got to be a rocket science to realize we got too many parts. And now you're adding another one. I understand we need the reservoir to help with the flooding. I do understand it. But the fact of the matter is the board of directors needs to relook at everything before they go and do that. It's not working. And you see Help Wanted with the city, you can watch your supervisors on top of supervisors standing there. You know, I grew up on a farm. The supervisors worked, okay? The truck drivers, when they wasn't driving, they worked. And the city truck drivers don't. I mean, they don't lift a finger. You can watch them. They'll stand there or sit there for hours. I mean, I think it would be beneficial for our entire city board to just take a week, at least a week, and say, hey, let's take a look at everything and see where we can cut corners. Because you're not. The amount of spending is through the roof, and it's going to hurt everybody. You take a wealthy man, and his money trickles down to the poorest of the poor. And guess what? You're going to hurt everybody. You hurt the wealthy, it slows the spending. It goes to the middle class. The middle class slows their spending. Everybody hurts. You're not helping nobody, including yourselves. The only thing you're doing is having the citizens hate you. And then you've got a lawyer in here every week, Mr. McCutcheons, saying, well, you broke the law on this, you broke the law on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And last we have Joey McCutcheon.
Thank you, Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith. Just the very fact we're meeting here on a Friday night just seems unfair to the citizens of Fort Smith. I appreciate Director Martin and his comments on that. This place should be full tonight, and it's not fair to have this meeting on a Friday night when people can't attend. Now we're up against a March 4th deadline, which shouldn't be. It's just a tax and spend mentality. That's what we've got in this city. We've talked about parks till we're blue in the face. We've got more parks than we know what to do with. We've got more water slides. I mean, we're paying $4.3 million for a water slide. Tonight, we're going to be considering the mayor's unconstitutional spending, which I hope there's considerable talk about that. Spending taxpayer money for pet projects is not right. Again, it's more spending. It's just more spending. And now we're coming, this tax, I mean, where does this 0.375 tax, we haven't, to my recollection, and maybe Director Kemp disagrees, but I don't think we've had any substantive talk at the meetings that we've been to, meeting after meeting, on this 0.375 tax, which just kind of came out of the blue, this increase. And now, maybe I'm missing something. I'm no tax expert, but for 34 years, we're extending this tax for 34 years until 2059. I mean, that just kind of blows my mind. I keep seeing this figure 2059. Where does that come from? Hopefully we can get an explanation tonight. We had a forum, or we had a group called Citizens for Unfair Taxations that we're starting again, and we're going to be exploring this issue, and we're looking for spending cuts. And we want to look at the mayor's budget of $675,000 for a ceremonial mayor. That is ridiculous.
Your time is up.
Oh, thank you.
That's all indicating to speak.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will have
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt item 4A2 with suspension of the rules.
Second.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Legal counsel has requested the specific motions to be provided separately, and if at your place there should be a paper that identifies those motions that need to be made. We have to.
Thought that's what I was doing.
Yeah, the motion to suspend has to be offered first and voted on first, and then the motion to adopt. It cannot be done collectively.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, you need a second?
I'll second suspension rules.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
And this is to suspend the rules.
Yes.
Directors George Katsavas.
No.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay.
Now I will need to go ahead and read the ordinance.
Okay.
And this was for item A2. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending ordinance number 20-22, levying a 0.75% sales and use tax within the city of Fort Smith, Arkansas, in order A, to extend the expiration date of the tax from December 31, 2030 to December 31, 2059, and B, to authorize I, 83.3% of the net collections of the tax to be used for betterments and improvements to the sewer system in addition to consent decree sewer purposes, and to repay and secure bonds issued to finance improvements for such purposes, and to I, 16.7% of the net collections of the tax to be used for police department purposes, and to repay and secure bonds issued to finance improvements for such purposes and prescribing other matters relating thereto.
Okay, thank you. This time, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Hold on, Mayor.
Director Settle.
I think Director Martin's asked for clarification myself. I'm just going to make sure I understand that this item 2A is the reauthorization of the 5/8 cents consent decree tax and the 1/8 cent police tax. Is that correct? Okay. So we have to do that. If you're going to do that, you have to, if you're going to bond out, or in other words, mortgage, pay a mortgage, you got to have it for the length of the mortgage. So this whole thing would go to 2059. So the police funding out of this would get police funding of 1/8 cents tax till 2059 out of this. That's a bonus.
Why from 2030 instead of 2025?
Oh, I see your point, yeah. Because the existing tax expires December 30th, 2030. This just extends it beyond that.
Okay.
Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
Well, I mean, did I not make the motion for 4A2?
Yes, but now we need the motion to adopt the actual ordinance for A2.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay. I have a motion second. Okay. Are there any comments on that? If not,
If I could, Mayor.
yes.
We're voting to put this into discussion, is that correct?
Be discussed anytime once a motion and second's made.
Okay, thank you.
So my understanding, Jared, you're going to go down the path of the diverting the sales tax?
Well, this is what's been motioned and seconded for our consideration is the continuation, and sorry, I'm getting over the flu from last week, so
That's
my
fine.
voice was, is the continuation of the tax at its current rate with the diverting of a portion of the funding from streets towards the consent decree work as was presented to the DOJ and EPA.
Okay.
But Mayor, if I could, just so I understand this, in this current pathway that we're going forth, which I could definitely am willing to walk down that path. Last week, the reason we did it this way is that we wanted to discuss either which track would we go or would we offer both? And so are we going to have a discussion at a higher level first, or are we just going to handle these as we walk through them?
I mean, we can start the discussion now if we want to.
Yep.
I'm prepared.
Yeah.
I just think that would be more fruitful
I
than
do
just
too.
going through this Robert rules
I
and
do
then
too.
just not really having the heartful discussion about, are we going to do one of these, offer both of these, or, or pick one?
We can always remove or vote to rescind the motion, I guess, so if we needed to.
Because since I've had days to think about this, I have opinions, so thank you.
Okay, go ahead. If you have,
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Upon one thought that I think we hadn't thought of when we brought this back up, and I thought it was a good discussion to bring up as options, but that we're not accounting for growth. The city's going to grow. And when I had a conversation even with Levon this past week, because he put a lot of work into this plan previously, and was asking him, why did you not propose an increase in sales tax leaving the streets alone? And the sentiment basically was that we spent out all this money, but the balance on the streets department went down $2 million. The fund is healthy, it's going good, and that going forward, the economic growth that we expect to have, or we hope to have, is going to still help us do streets. I mean, there is only a threshold of a certain amount of street projects that we're going to be able to take on within a year. So personally, I think it's just an easier pill to swallow to not increase taxation, to account for growth in this plan. To Director Martin's comment last week, this is what we've pitched to the public. People have had time to mull that over. It's not increasing taxation. And then the last point I would make for discussion would be, if we have gotten it wrong, and let's say our growth is not what we had expected, then we could come back to the voters and say, we didn't expect, we thought we'd have higher growth. we now need to talk to you about some sort of a change in this. But if we, I hear people say, don't pull from streets, but I also hear people, the same crowd, sharing sentiments also about tightening up. And I think if we think about the growth of that sales use tax, and it should grow, it has grown. If you look at the history of the sales use tax, it has grown. And so it's going to continue to grow. I think we can continue on with that plan, and that's just my sentiment tonight.
Any other, Director Settle?
Thank you. So I did spend a lot of time looking at this. I got a spreadsheet in front of me. I've done the math. I've taken everything here and spent time looking at the math. To me, it's all about the math. First math is this. I didn't vote for the consent decree. My buddy Neil didn't. Ms. Casavas didn't. You didn't. Jared didn't. George and Andre have voted on the consent decree. Right, George?
Yeah,
Right? You voted on 2015, the consent decree.
under false information, yes.
Well, but it was voted on, and I begged this board in 2015 not to vote for it.
It's false information.
I begged this board to continue the fight at the Supreme Court,
It wasn't
and I was voted down. So I've fought this thing tooth and nail. The problem I have is we haven't really asked, what are we going to get? We hear the consent decree because we hear about raw sewage. 5.4 million gallons of untreated. But what's the denominator? The denominator is how much are we treating a year? Nobody's asked that question. I have. Just to give you some information, we've treated 21.5 million gallons a day. 365 days a year. 7.847 billion gallons of treated sewage. Our team has done a great job. Lance and his team can treat that much water. The numerator is 5.4 million gallons. What's the difference of us having untreated sewage and somebody peeing in 10 Keller and it floats down the river? Absolutely nothing. 0.06%. That's what we're arguing about. The federal government is sticking it to us for 0.06%, not 0.06%. Is that fair? It's not. But we have to have a solution because that's what the federal government says to do. So we're going to come up with a solution. I've looked at all solutions, from rates only to sales tax. Just to give you a flavor. If you don't vote a 3.8-cent sales tax or diversion, either way, we have 32,100 customers on the sewer. Starting in if you had to say we're all going to pay by rates, the rates would go up $29 in year one. By year 33, it's almost $40 per month. Per month. If you want to say we're not going to fund anything at all except with rates, no pennies, no favorites, nothing at all, start off at $77 and go all the way down to $106 at a 1% growth, only 1% growth. That's the math. Y'all can look on spreadsheets. I'll share it with anybody. I don't care. Diverting the sales tax, I understand where everybody's mind is. Yes, we can go back to the voters and ask, hey, we messed up, we need to put 3/8 back in. But you're going to divert almost 40, over the course of this tax, $400 million out of the street funds to do this. And that's fine. If the board agrees to that, okay. My issue is we should have fought this. We need a solution. We're going to come up with a solution, give it to the voters. But I want the voters to understand what we're fighting for something that I think we should be fighting hard at the political side of it right now. But we have, because the state constitution changed, we have 2 times the vote. We told the EPA we do this. We can put it out there. I think the voters will vote for a diversion. I don't like it. I think the sales tax is more clean because it keeps the street fund whole. It keeps the and we can bond it all and get done. I don't like bonding. Neil and I have talked about this. We hate bonding. But I've got sales tax. I've looked at rates. You know, the rate we just increases everybody's bill about, where's math? $1.50 on a 5 CCF a month, $1.66 in the first year, $1.77, $1.82 per month, $1.88, $2 a month on a 5 CCF month, yeah.
Which is 60% of it.
Which is 60%, so yeah, I'm trying to look at the big hole, so. My whole thing is this, I didn't vote for consent decree, and I'm asking to come up with a solution. This thing started, as Neil posted on his Facebook, started in the 80s, when I was in the kindergarten or high school, elementary, as you were, same thing. And this board's asking to fix something, so when I'm, I'd say this, I said it last time, when I'm 86 years old, this thing will be done. That's the contents. I'm doing something for my future kids and my future grandkids. Also think about, are we going to sacrifice one infrastructure issue today to solve another, so in 30 years we've got that infrastructure issue again? That's the trade-off. Parks budgets Parks is 1/8 cents tax was voted on by the people. It has to be for parks. If we want to ask the voters to divert that, we can, but I'll tell you what, that will probably go negative because a lot of people like that fund and like the parks. I think that, so the question is do you want to pay an extra 3 cents or 3/8 cents of sales tax or divert 3/8 cents sales tax the other way? But that's the math.
Are you proposing something from Column B?
I might. I want to see where this group's going to go with it. But to me, I mean,
I was going to ask you if I could, Director Sell, just more penny for your thoughts. Are you advocating that we choose only one of those? Are you advocating we give the people a choice to choose?
You can't really give them a choice. You have to put only one item on the ballot. It's up to us to do it. And unfortunately, the state guys decided years ago that, too many special elections all around, so they went from whenever you could have it to 4 down to 2, and that's where we're at.
Are you
To me, honestly, I think we should just ask the voters to extend the existing street tax and then have a bigger, broad discussion over the summer about what we want to do for the consent decree work. But I know the DEP and DOJ will come down this, and we'll have people out in the public say we didn't do enough work. But I think there's this undertone of what's happening in Washington. I know they're watching. I know the guy sitting back is watching us. It tells us what we need to do with the EPA at Region 6 in Dallas. But there's a point where I'm just going to speak my mind, and that's where I'm at tonight. I'm just sick and tired of holding my P's and Q's. And that's where I'm at. To me, I think if you let Lee Zeldin and Pam Bondi at it, we'll see what happens. And we can ask the voters to do something and go negotiate in Washington. But we should have been fighting this. We should have gone to court. I'm fine going back to court if we want to. Everybody can tell us not to. But if we need a math equation, I've got it. The math equation is pretty simple. Either divert and take out of streets of almost $400 million over the next 33 years, or add 3/8 cents tax, get the thing bonded, and 10 years the consent decree is done, you can pay it till I'm probably dead and gone. That's the math. I'm done, Mayor.
Any other questions? Director Neil Martin, you recognize.
Yeah, so I think we've asked, or the citizens have been asked a lot. So when I wrote that letter to Representative Crawford, who spoke with Governor Sanders, kind of outlined what the citizens have shouldered. 167% rate increases in 15, 16, and 17. 5/8 cent sales tax. Now this is potentially adding 3/8 to that. We just approved 17.5% on that's on the low side of a rate increase. I mean they have done a lot for and I can agree with Kevin. We should have never got into the consent decree in the first place. But they're paying for sins of the past. 1983 is crazy for me. But they've asked a lot. We've asked them, or they've shouldered a lot. And I don't think it is in our best interest or their best interest to add rates, add sewer rates, and increase their taxes. I'm for diverting that 3/8 to go to consent decree and have streets at 5/8. Now, what that's going to mean is we're going to have to really look at some of these projects. There's projects on the CIP that I know the extension for Kelly Highway has been on there for years. It keeps getting pushed back. Now, maybe this is time that goes off. I know we've all gotten communication about the Mazard route widening. Maybe that goes off. Maybe we look at some of those things. Maybe we look at all the streets that we're resurfacing, and we take a more measured approach in which ones need to get resurfaced. I think we can look at all of those things and understand that there will be growth and be able to manage on less rather than burdening our citizens again. So that's where I'm going to stay is reallocating those dollars, keep sales tax rate at 9.5, and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Director Good, since you're not here, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
A few comments. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you guys allowing me to attend the meeting this way. First, before I want to thank you, Kevin, for your diligence in your math. But I do want to ask Director Kasavitz, before I move on, about his accusation there was some false information given when those directors of us voted for the consent decree. Yeah. What false information are you talking about?
Back then, what was the street department? What was it?
Steve Parks was the utilities director.
Yeah. Well, when this all came up, there was a big push by city and to get this approved, and I went to Steve Parks, and I said, Steve, because in retrospect, sure, we should have gone to court. I said, Steve, what's this going to cost the people to comply with this consent decree? And he said, George, we figured it up. We've gone through it several times. A $10 to $15 sewer increase will take care of the whole consent decree. That's what he told me back then. A $10 to $15 increase will take care of this. Nobody could imagine the stipulations of this consent decree has evolved into. It's a monster. It's just nobody. I don't think anybody can envision what we're going through right now by agreeing to this consent decree back then. And back then, City Council Jerry Canfield was of the opinion that we just need to it's not worth fighting. Let's just go to court and settle it and deal with the EPA and go from there. But Ronnie, that's the only reason. If it hadn't been for that, I would have voted against that. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I appreciate you recalling that. I want to start with the comments that have been in the media, the newspaper, for decades about past boards kicking the can down the road, kicking the can down. We talk now about, those board members that did vote for the consent decree and didn't. I'm very well familiar where I stood on the issue. And I stood on the issue because I listened to staff and the city administrator, who asked me, what is the chance of receivership? What would it be like for the federal government to take over our system? What kind of rates would they then push on our citizens at that point? You guys might be well ready to take on the federal government, but from where we stood at the time, knowing that past boards had kicked the can down the road, caused this issue. Kevin asked, I don't know if it was Kevin or Neil, spoke to why the citizens are paying such a high rate right now. Well, they're paying such a high rate right now because board members failed to take action to raise rates when staff said, we need to raise rates. That's why they're paying a high rate now. And as far as the comment goes from Director Settle about the federal government sticking it to us, That may be well said. But if you think they're sticking it to us now, think about the amount of money that our citizens will be paying for rates now that the board had continued to kick the can down the road. If you think that they're retaliating now, we didn't take action. The boards before us didn't take action. Some of us wanted to take action during previous boards, but did not. So it's not the citizens' fault. And I'm not saying that it is, but it's previous boards. And I want you to remember, because I'll never forget it, because it was said time and time again about the board kicking the can down the road. So here we are again. We need to make a decision. We need to make several decisions. We need to make a lot of hard decisions. Once again, every year we are forced to make these hard decisions. And we decided as a board, Kevin, you were part of that we were not going to continue to kick the can down the road. So we're going to face these issues. And yeah, they're hard. So in saying that, I want to talk about my concern with diverting money from the street tax. I know it's an issue about prioritizing the consent decree. And that to me it weighs heavy. It weighs heavy on the board, the city organization, and citizens. But just remember, and I've thought about it. I've talked to staff about it. Think about what's going to be lost by taking away, this money from the street department. They are safety issues. We have signal lights, safety signal lights, traffic safety lights. There's about $1.5 million for smaller projects that goes to Matt and his department. Streets, sidewalks, and associated drainage. The money that goes to some of the money that goes to the foreign military mission. There is a lot of money that we will be taken away from this department. I believe that the figure was roughly $11.2 million a year, and I believe Kevin said over the span of this tax it's going to be $400 million. I know it sounds like a lot, but just like Kevin said, Director Settle said, the voters voted on this tax that we've had in place for almost 40 years, and it was widely received by the voters. So was the Parks 1/8 tax, widely approved by the voters. So don't think we're going to get out of this easy by just saying, well, we're going to take money out of this parks money or the streets department money without hearing it from the citizens. The thing to consider, again, is prioritizing the consent decree. That's what we're hearing more of. So if we've got to let something go, if we've got to let something, I'm not going to say fall by the wayside, but just simply take a back seat to the consent decree, then that's what we need to do. And I don't think that the citizens are going to appreciate the money coming from parks or streets, but they definitely don't want to see increased higher rates that we're going to have to stand by moving forward with the DOJ. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I think Director Kevin Settle was next in the queue, and then Director Kemp.
I'll let Lee go ahead. I'll go after him, Mayor.
Thank you. A few thoughts that I just want to go back over of some statistics. One of this, what is, this is more for Jeff here, I guess, in administration. What was the fine talked about if we don't meet certain qualifications? There was some number north of 20 million.
25 million.
$25 million. Is if the city did not do what?
Well, I think that is a combination of the stipulated penalties that are built into the consent decree that at this time, through various motions for force majeure and other actions that we've proposed, that we think mitigate some of that. But I mean, when you read the letter of the law, so to speak, in the consent decree, we owe up to that amount in stipulated penalties for failure to be in compliance.
And did I hear the word negotiation as implying that they are not waiving it if we do this?
So far, they have waived them. They have not assessed those to us. Okay. They could.
And if I may, the actual amount that has been assessed from the form of penalties to the city of Fort Smith over the life of the consent decree is $1,390,000, correct?
That's correct. That's the amount that we have paid in stipulated penalties, yes.
Okay, I do remember that email. Thank you for that, Director Rigo. Other conversation then also is what are they saying must be met to avoid receivership? What are they specifically asking for us to avoid receivership?
Well, the main objective is the elimination of all sanitary sewer overflows. And so when we continue to have sanitary sewer overflows, which we do, I mean, the number is greatly reduced from when we started, believe me. But when we continue to have those, we are not in compliance with the Clean Water Act.
Okay. Then Director Martin, you'd mentioned your support, of just taking the current plan, which is amending that one sales tax that's already been approved, just asking the voters to approve that towards this initiative. But I also know that you are not for bonds. Are you advocating that maybe we consider just asking the voters to see if they want to amend the street tax and then only do the money as we have it and not get into bonds?
Well, ideally, yes. However, through the negotiations with the EPA and the DOJ, they have talked about front-loading a lot of this work. They've been frustrated with us about not progressing as much as they would like. So what they've asked us to do is bond dollars out so that we can
front-load the work.
So we can have $100 million worth of projects in 26 or 27.
Do you personally stand in opposition to that idea?
I believe where I'm at is I have the federal government telling me I've got to do something. And we've tried our way out of it. We've tried to get out of it. We've tried to negotiate it. And I don't think we're done with that in terms of with Trump and with Zeldin. But I feel like we've got to move forward with what they're asking us to do. I would rather do pay-as-you-go, and we've presented that to them, and that has not been well received. And I was on the phone call when the colloquial, the congeniality stopped in August. I heard, oh, good relationship, I'm on it. Not a good relationship. And so from that point on, August has been heavy-handed, I guess would be the term.
My comment would be then perhaps, this is just, I have one comment and then just a question that I think I'm going to have to look up myself or someone can in this meeting. Maybe the step is action with caution. In other words, in this process, it's still an open negotiation. You can't have your cake and eat it too here. If we don't add to the sales tax, but just ask the voters to take that from the existing streets department, knowing that, once again, I'm accounting for growth, that we're still going to meet our quota. To your point, we put a couple big projects on pause if we had to, in the idea that maybe we tell them we are not necessarily agreeing immediately to the bonds and the front loading of the work, so that we are not putting a debt that Director Settle's talking about will be paid off shortly before he becomes 90 years old. And so, yes, we will fix it. Yes, we are committed to it, but we're proposing action with caution, which is we're not sure where we are with the bonds. In other words, we've shown the rates at 3.5%. We've shown a commitment to getting more money for consent decree work out of the existing tax, but then telling them we want to hear back. We want longer time periods. We want some way to not be in debt for decades on end. That's just one thought to bring up. And then the last question I have, and I'll defer to my colleagues, is how much money did streets, how much money came in to streets last year?
$29.5 million. I've got
how much did we spend out?
I just know what we came.
And what's the ending balance? And I think that's something that I think we
it just changes. every month because you got projects going in, projects going out?
We just got the 24
Number.
24 unfinalized budget, so we should be able to see it.
That's what I'm gonna look it up, yeah.
And Andy Richards provided that.
Thank you,
provided
Mayor.
that. I will say, one thing I do want to say in response to your question. We got an email this week, or Jeff forwarded us an email this week that were questions from the attorney with the DOJ. And I thought it was very interesting, the very last line of that email. Until then, the 2015 consent decree is still in effect, or something like that, which I'd never heard that before. That basically says they've verbally approved additional years. Is that correct?
That's correct, but that has not been finalized by
Right.
court order yet.
They've verbally approved additional years for the consent decree. When I walk around and say, hey, we got some years for for COVID, we got some years for the flood, technically we have not. So what he just reiterated in that email is you're still on a schedule that should end in 2027.
Yeah.
I was really shocked.
I would agree with you. When
Yeah.
I read that, I thought, oh, checkmate.
Right.
You know, that's what I saw in my head.
Right.
And I thought, well, you know, that to me doesn't show we're willing to talk it out.
Right.
And I haven't been in those discussions, but that was a very weird ending of
Yes,
an email.
I agree. So according to that, we're 2 years away we should be 2 years away from being done with the consent decree.
I think Director Settle, then Director Neil Martin, and then Director Christina Cassavi.
So just to do the math, sitting over here, to pay as you go, we don't bond it, we do all the work. It'll take 22 years to do it.
I'm sorry, what you say? How many?
At a 1% growth rate, and I'm figuring.
The text sheet.
Andre, you're on the phone, Andre. Thank you. If you pay as you go at a 1% growth rate for us and a 10% inflationary rate, it'll take you about 22 years. 10%. I just threw it out there because cost of gas.
So, Director Settle, if I hear you saying,
pay as you go is 22 years.
however we did it, whether we did the increase of the 3/8 or we borrow it from the streets, in 22 years, we could have this done. Is that what you're saying?
If you pay as you go, no bonds.
That's what I'm saying. Why would we go into debt for decades on end?
That's $730 million generated.
That's a negotiation piece to me.
And I think
It's because you can't front load pay as you go.
Yeah.
Right. Going back to the letter that went to Governor Sanders, what Administrator Dingman said was pretty much every consent decree is more than 12 years. I don't know if we've seen a consent decree.
40 years at Kansas City.
25 years, 30 years, 40 years. And we're at 12. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. I think what doesn't also make sense is the fantasy that you'll never have an SSO. You fix everything here, the fantasy by the EP and DOJ is that you'll never have an SSO. That's like telling you'll never have a breakdown in a piece of equipment. Your car will never leak oil on your concrete in your driveway. You'll never have your commode overflow. That's what that is. And I'll tell you what, when I read that email, that's the reason I'm speaking now.
Yep.
Because that was it for me. We've been doing everything possibly can to help out, do it the right way, and we get that email and that line. That was it for me. So,
Director, I think, go ahead, Director Settle.
I think I'm good for now. Lee asked the question about the stuff and the thought of having no SSOs is not going to be an option.
No, I agree.
The last thing is, we just talked about the rates. The rates we passed is going to help fund the bond, help with the bond covenants. I don't like the bond. I pay as you go. If they would negotiate and fair, it should have been for 40 years. We could have had done this over 40 years and been done. And all of us we'd be focusing on bigger and brighter things. Now we're focusing on this because they want a time crunch to some 22, probably, 21 years to do all the work. Because you're at year 9 now, right? You're not 20 yet. You're 8 now. No,
Yeah.
Year 10.
Yep.
You're 10. You're 9.
15. Yeah,
15. Starting 16. So you're at 25. You're 9 now. Add 10 more, 19 years. And they're asking the voters to I'm probably listening to you and thinking about it. Maybe the best option is to ask the voters to divert. I don't like that either. And if we find out that we're getting streets are getting deteriorated, then we can go back and ask the voters, or future boards can ask the voters for a 3/8 or a quarter or some sales tax to do future work. If they vote that down, then we can go a different direction.
And I just want to say, I think we also push back on this bond strategy that's being pushed to us to front load the expenses.
The reason they want you to do a bond strategy is because they want to make sure that they get the work done. They don't give a care about anybody out there. All they care about is they think that the work needs to be done. That's what they think, not what we need. No, what's the need? If my understanding from Lance is if we go do work on the Mazard Street sewer department, we get about 80% of the SSOs completely off the board. So you take your 5.4 million, take 80% of that off. Now you're talking less than 1 million gallons of SSOs. Am I mistaken, Lance? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Dingman, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one quick comment about the actual issuance of the bonds and the discussion of front-loading the work. We've talked anecdotally about the $360 million that we need to approve in bonds, but we would not issue all $360 million at once because there are spend-down requirements associated with those dollars. We have to spend them all within or at least a large percentage of them within 3 years. And we couldn't do that with all $360 million. So we would issue it in series. And so, the first series, estimating, about a third of it, then we can evaluate what happens further through the lifespan of the new presidential administration and the EPA administration as to whether additional series are actually required for the projects that we need. But in the meantime, we do start front-loading some of these projects, but we wouldn't be able to spend all of that $360 million within the first 3 years.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin.
Would we be obligated to the $360 million?
Yeah, well, not necessarily.
Okay.
We're only obligated to what we issue.
What we issue, okay.
Right, and so we would have to take affirmative action then to issue a second series or a third series for the rest.
So even though we would say 360 or 380 after all the fees and everything, we wouldn't be obligated to that if we just issued $100 million.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Okay. One question that I have, I think part of citizens' frustration, and I think this is good. When we went and we adjusted this sales tax to 5.8% consent decree projects only, a lot of people were frustrated because they seem like it's a never-ending thing. I remember Wade Gilkey had said it's like this black hole. And I think part of the frustration is the fact the way this consent decree is set up, in the fact that the very beginning you perform your sanitary sewer assessments, which is identification. So when this consent decree was leveled on us, we had no idea the scope of the work, that boggles my mind. We had no idea what the scope was. You go through those sanitary sewer assessments, and that's when you figure out what your scope is. And then the rest of your consent decree, if I'm right, you're funding the fixes, right? So we get in, we don't realize what the scope of it is. We know it's bad. And there was an estimate of $480 million, but you get in and now you see, oh no, it's not $480 million. Mm-hmm. It's $600 million, it's $800 million, whatever, what the number we've gone up there with, 800. And I think that's part of the frustrating thing is the citizens, they thought, okay, $480 million, I'll hold my nose and I'll go. And we keep coming back and saying, okay, we need more money. My question is, if and I know we've had different discussion here, if we had this 1 cent sales tax, we just raised rates 17.5% over the next 5 years. Will this 1% cover the consent decree regardless of how long it is? Here's the thing. Are we going to have to go back to voters and say, we need more? Can anybody answer that?
Jeff, you want to respond?
It is it's a fluctuating question because it does depend on growth. It depends on how well our sales tax performs over that period of years. It depends on the revenue that we're able to garner from any other source, whether it be grants or some other source of funding other than bonds or rates.
Well,
And
let's say we got nothing else. 1% sales tax, 17.5% rate increase after 5 years. That's just, if we use today's dollars, just today's dollars, 1% is going to get you 30 million. That rate increase that was just passed, 17.5, will generate $7.5 million by year 5, 2030. That's $37.5 million unadjusted. When you take that $37.5 million and multiply that out over the life of the consent decree, $900 million, is that it? Like, is that it? Like, are the citizens done committing their dollars, any more dollars, to the consent decree? That's the question.
I think the answer to that is no. We can't be sure of that. I mean, it'll depend on how effective the fixes are that we've got. It'll depend on continued assertion of the requirements as they exist today. I don't know. I mean, it could be more, or the requirements could be less stringent. But it is. That's the question was asked. Well, why not? Our 10-year plan. Why not put the? I think the DOJ even asked, why not put the rate increase, the 3.5% for all 10 of those years instead of the 5 that we talked about? Well, because we intend on something changing in that next 5 years. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we have to reassert and continue on with a certain amount of rate increases or issuing bonds or finding additional funds. But in the meantime, we'll still be working to find alternate sources of funding or project completion so that we can get completion of the projects required for the consent decree without going back for the amount of money that we're estimating today. Maybe that amount changes in 5 years.
Well, $37.5 million times 30 years, if we went that route, is $1.1 billion. To me, that should cover it, but
and maybe it will, but my presumption is that it will not. We just don't know that answer.
I can't go back to the citizens again for the
I won't.
4th, 5th time.
Well, to your point, Director Martin, I would just say, when do you say enough is enough?
Right. I agree.
I know it.
And the final thing that I do have, this, and Mr. McCutcheon brought this up. When I saw this, the 34 years, I've never seen a tax like 34, an increase or a tax for 34 years. What's the reasoning for that? I was thinking, okay, 10 years, we come back, we give the voters the opportunity to look at it again and say, you guys are doing it, you're fixing the stuff, or you're not. And so how does this 34 years come into play?
If I might, the bonds are to be issued for 30 years. Okay. Now, what I said earlier about issuing in separate series, if we don't issue that last part of the $360 million until 4 years from now, we need 30 years on top of that to pay those bonds. So that's why 34 years.
A 30-year mortgage.
Well, and then if we then go and issue bonds 5 years later, 10 years later, whatever was on the plan we gave to the EPA, that starts the whole 30 years all over again, right?
That would be a whole new process, but potentially, it could be 30 years. It could be, we could work on a shorter time frame.
Your kids might be 89 by the time it's done.
So
Director Christine Casavis.
all of this is assuming that the money is what's the problem. When I sat in on one of the EPA DOJ meetings, their frustration is that we weren't hitting the metrics that we laid out. That we said we can do this many miles of pipe, and then we came back and said, oh, well, I think we said it was 10 something, well, we're only doing 6. And it wasn't that the money was the problem, it was that we can't get people to bid on these projects.
Yep, that's part of it. Now, would any discussion about the flood and COVID in with that? I mean, I think that played a part in it as well.
I don't remember that. I mean, it's been since summer, but, you know, I mean, Carl was adamant with them that, you know, the issue was not having enough people to work. And I think he mentioned the, you know, what's going on at the Walmart campus in Bentonville and, you know, some of the highway projects, and we couldn't get people to work and bid on these things. And so their frustration was very much, you set a number and you're not hitting these goals you set for yourself. You know, I would say that I would agree with Director Settle and his frustration, you know, with the way this has been handled. You know, they're always negotiating from a place of strength. I mean, we're just the little guy. They're the federal government. They're always coming from a place of strength. And, you know, I think the way to handle this is diplomatically. You know, I think we need surrogates speaking on our behalf to the Trump administration. I mean, I'm not above tweeting to him, and I've done it. I've contacted him on Truth Social. I've tweeted. Maybe if enough of us do it, he'll take notice. But I mean, I'm not above doing that.
I thought about tweeting Administrator Zeldin the other night. Well, I mean, the thing is, he was in Flint just the other day.
Flint, who has, I believe 40 years on their consent decree. I think Houston has 30.
Right.
And we have 12. And so I think that we really need to identify and target some surrogates that can speak on our behalf and make inroads with people that can do something. Because, you know, and I know I've said this, I know none of you agree with me, but I don't think we have the right representation showing up for us in these meetings. Because when I sat in Carl's office with Paul Calamita and he said, you're getting a better deal than you deserve. I mean, in my personal life, if I hired an attorney that said, you're getting a better deal than you deserve, I'd fire him. I bet there's some attorneys out here that can't imagine ever saying that to a client. So, you know, I don't know that we have the right representation representing us, speaking on our behalf. I think we need to identify some political routes as well. You know, we talk a lot about the 2019 flood and force majeure, and I would not call that an act of God. That was an act of the government. That was the Corps that chose to do that. They chose to flood us. They chose to ruin our pump station. They chose to cost us millions of dollars. They didn't make us whole. We only got refunded at 75%. You know, I think that's something we should be pursuing. You know, as far as the bonds go, I guess we issue those in a series and we're only paying interest on each series as it comes. Is that right? Sorry, I've got a lot of notes here. I've been listening to you all for a while. And I know that someone mentioned receivership. To my knowledge, that has not been part of the discussion. Is that true?
That's true. I mean, that's true. I mean,
so right now, I mean, we do have some sort of relationship. We have some sort of working relationship. But, you know, say we get this money, what does it do if we can't get people to come and complete these projects? I mean, is it just that we can pay more for the same project? I mean, aren't we still, we're still missing manpower. I mean, would that be accurate?
all of this presumes that we will be able to get the manpower to do these projects. And if that doesn't come to pass and it does cost more or take longer to get these done, then that creates complications in the future.
You know, I mean, I'm all for getting this done as quickly and efficiently as possible. You know, and I can kind of understand both sides of the argument with A2 or with number B4. You know, it seems like everybody is kind of in favor of A2, so I'm not opposed to that. I can kind of see the argument for both. I will just say, you know, for me, I'm not in favor of putting this all on the citizens on their backs through a rate increase. You know, we've got an EPA that cares about an environment, but not the people who live in it. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got everyday people bearing the burden of this, and the government doesn't understand that, or they're unwilling to understand that they're putting this on the backs of their own citizens. And so you know, if we can spread it out through a tax, I think that's probably a better way to go, to buckle down and get the work done and move on. Thank you.
I think Director Rigo and then Director Settle.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think the thing we have to make sure we keep sight of is that, you know, our role, the thing that we control directly, is rates and the adjustment of rates. And so earlier tonight, we just made the last adjustment we're going to make on the sewer rates for at least 5 years. I think that's not only the spirit of this group, but it's laid out very clearly in the plan that was proposed to the DOJ and the EPA. I think we have to keep sight of the fact that it's the folks, it's the voters that make the decision about the taxes. And so all we can do is refer a plan for their consideration, and then it's up to the people to decide. And, you know, come that election in May, they'll go along with the plan that's proposed, or they won't. And then, you know, there will be a spot for us to re-engage. And so I think, you know, there are times where, you know, you could try to think, well, you know, is this massaged exactly correctly to be sent to the folks, or you need to learn something in the action of people voting. And so I think that, you know, I'm encouraged that we're discussing referring something to the people for their consideration tonight. When it comes to interfacing with the new administration, I would just like to make a suggestion to Jeff and the mayor respectfully. I read an interesting article in this past week about the mayor of Colorado Springs having a call with the deputy chief of staff for the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. Her name's Serrano Glasner. She's a former mayor herself of Mendham, New Jersey. And they were able to have a fruitful conversation, and meetings were arranged with the deputy chief of staff and the chief of staff for the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. That would be the entity within the White House and the executive branch that helps other branches of government with those sorts of intergovernmental conversations and discussions. And they've got some meetings coming up during the National League of Cities. And so I know that's coming up, and so I would encourage leadership to reach out and make sure that those of us that are able to attend the National League of Cities get a chance to interface with folks in the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. I think that's a very fruitful avenue for the discussion of these types of things around where you can have good advocacy on behalf of other branches of government with challenges or difficulties or questions that we have with executive branch agencies. So, thank you.
I think Director Settle was next.
The only last thing I'll say is the sales tax does split the cost between visitors to our city. We know that over about half of the sales tax paid in is by people that do not live in our city and our citizens. So allowing a sales tax does push the burden on other people. You know, I've offered, you know, someone's a spreadsheet, I can look at it with you. If you have solutions, I'm willing to listen. But right now, I think the best option, listen to all the back and forth, is we'll let the voters decide, and they'll tell us what they want to do.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the way to do it.
You know, looking at that last correspondence we had from DOJ, from a layman's standpoint, what they're looking for is a plan that's front-loaded. And that's going to be up to us to decide what that's going to look like. Director Kemp.
I just want to confirm before we get into voting, because I feel like we're coming to a close on this discussion. If we approve, say, the option for the Track 4A, do we still reserve the ability to put pause on the front-loading discussion of what that looks like until we can see if we can get more years than the years we've even asked, you know, that were presented, especially when I'm learning tonight that some cities get 40 years. And to Director Settle's comments and his math tonight, that if we could do it in 22 years, but let's say they give us 25 years, the tax that would be potentially before the voters could resolve that in a reasonable time frame and not extend this to decades upon decades. So I guess what I'm saying is if I vote yes for 4A, Track 4A, do we still have an ability to negotiate and discuss further any potential bonding and front loading and issuing of bonds?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Okay.
And I believe once we make a decision, I think DOJ is waiting to see what we're going to do. once we do that, I think that opens the door for additional years and further discussion about getting us to an end date.
I think that is also correct, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So I think we would be in order to vote on item 4A2. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. This time, let's entertain a motion to suspend the rule.
Point of inquiry, I believe we already
We've done
did that,
Okay.
Mayor.
All right, thank you. Okay. Okay. All right, at this time, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle. Yes. Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Point of inquiry, the next 4 items need to be considered separately, but they're all procedurally related to placing this item on the ballot.
That is correct.
All right, well, I make a motion to approve item 4A3.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any comments on that item? Please call the roll.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Can I get clarification on this? What this is?
4A3.
4A3. 4A3.
Resol-
Referring it to the citizens?
Yes.
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 Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Just one moment, please. No, it's the mayor's trying to get us turned off. We're looking for a motion on.
I'd like to make a motion,
Item 4A.
I'd like to make a motion in support of item 4A4.
Yes.
To suspend the rules.
Okay.
Yes, suspend the rules.
With suspension of the rules?
It needs to
motion-
suspend.
To clarify, the motion should be just to suspend the rules.
I was certain we had done that already. But I'd like to make a motion to, what does this suspension of the rules apply to?
This is item 4A4, and this is just to suspend the rules, and then you will vote on the ordinance separately.
For this ordinance specifically.
All right, so moved.
We need a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
This time, we need a motion to adopt 4A4.
I do need to read the ordinance.
Okay, please do.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 72-85, levying a 1% sales and use tax within the city of Fort Smith, Arkansas, in order to A, to set December 31, 2059 as the expiration date of the tax, and B, to authorize the net collections of the tax to be used as follows. I, 62.5% for streets, bridges, and associated drainage, and I, 37.5% for betterments and improvements to the sewer system and consent decree sewer purposes, and the pledge of such 37.5% of the net collections of the tax to repay and secure bonds issued to finance capital improvements for such purposes, and prescribing other matters relating thereto.
Entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Point of inquiry, please, on this. The language says 37.5% of net collections of the tax to repay and secure bonds issued to finance capital improvements. Does this, once again, back to my question, Lee would say potentially secure bonds. Am I voting, if I vote for that, do I reserve the right to propose that we look at a pay-as-you-go format with an extension of a consent decree timeframe?
This authorizes us to obtain bonds. It does not require us to.
Thank you.
What about repaying the existing bonds we have?
This won't be allowed.
This does not.
Okay, because it says repay, so, all right.
Thank you.
So are we, to Director Kemp's point, are we tied to securing bonds through this?
We are not required to. No, we are authorized to.
Okay, we're authorized, okay.
And the board will vote on issuance bonds in the future. So this, if this does pass, the board will have to vote on issuance of bonds.
Okay, any other comments? Okay.
I mean, does anybody have another solution to these two of these options? Because, I mean, there's 6 of us voting yes, and George, you're saying no. Is there an option you like better? You like the 4B option?
No, I'll tell you why I voted no in a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to hear it now. I mean, if there's a better option, I'd like to hear it.
Well, there's not a better option as to the what's presented.
I mean, we got to generate $664 million plus bonds, so you're talking...
Yeah, that ain't going to happen, though, Kevin. No. Here's what I'm pissed off about. Years and years and years of spending. Spend. The water slides. You know, how many millions would we have had over the last 20 years if we'd really tightened our belt to go to this stuff instead of burdening the taxpayer? It's just, you know, these people, they live in the real world out there. They budget just like, and they don't go buy stuff.
George, is there not a
They don't go
motion
buy
and a
stuff they
second
can't,
on the floor?
they don't need.
What part?
All I'm saying is, if we're going to have to get a new way of doing business in the future, or we're going to be stuck like this for a long time.
Okay. Why don't we continue to vote?
I disagree, George.
Okay.
Well, I got you.
Okay.
The voters told us how to vote, and we've done police, fire, parks.
I understand
consent
that.
decree, streets.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is just, we're voting to send it to the voters and let them decide.
And let
That's
them
right.
decide.
It shouldn't even have come to that point. We should have had the money. We should have had the money. The way I look at it. But, you know, I mean, I'm just not in a good mood.
I mean,
I didn't vote for the consent decree.
Kevin, I agree.
I shouldn't be in this spot anyway.
Come on, we've got, let's finish the procedure.
We meet yearly
Okay.
to talk about our budget.
Yeah.
And I've been frustrated with our budget, but we meet regularly to talk about it.
Well, earlier you said, do we need a new bridge? Do we need this new road that goes to nowhere? I mean,
I'm not for a road that goes nowhere. I'm fine with carving some of that off and focusing where that 1% where it needs to be.
Okay, point of order.
All right.
Point of order. Let's get back to the vote. Okay, where were we? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
We're going to 4A5. Just need a motion to adopt a resolution.
So moved.
I need a second, please.
Second.
I second.
Any comments from the board? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
no.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay. We're going to item 4A1, This time we need a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved suspension of the rules.
Second.
Second, please call the roll.
Just to clarify, this is just to suspend the rules.
Yes, ma'am.
Directors Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Nope.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
I do need to read the ordinance first.
Okay, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance calling a special election in the city of Fort Smith, Arkansas on the question of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing costs of betterments and improvements to the city's sewer system and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
Okay, thank you. This time, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from the board?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Jarrett, please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas.
No.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
This time, we'll go to item number 5 on the agenda.
Item number 5 is a resolution requested by the board at the February 4th meeting whereby the city would ask that the Arkansas Highway Commission and the Arkansas Department of Transportation permit the reinstatement of angled parking on the 300 block of Garrison Avenue. RDOT controls Garrison Avenue right-of-way by virtue of its designation as part of the U.S. Highway 64. In 2023, during the construction rehabilitation of the Garrison Avenue Bridge, business owners on the 300 block Garrison asked that the angled parking in front of their businesses be adjusted to parallel parking to reduce conflict with the congested traffic using the bridge. RDOT permitted this adjustment and also stated at the time that returning the angled parking would not be permitted according to its regulations. In recent months, business owners on 300 Garrison have asked that the angled parking be reinstated, to which RDOT staff has denied based on regulations along state highways. The Board of Directors has indicated interest in asking for this resolution so that the question might be elevated to the Arkansas Highway Commission on behalf of the business owners' requests. We'll take any questions the board may have on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Okay, need a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments? Director Neil Martin.
Technically, we don't need to do this, but
Right.
I think it's fine that we do, but we don't have to.
Right, okay. Anything
What
else?
do you mean by that?
We could, Jeff could just send a letter. Sure.
So this doesn't necessarily get the parking changed back?
No.
Okay.
That's
Because I've
part of it.
talked to some local small business owners down there, and they really believe that this is hurting their business.
Yeah.
All right.
I've been assured by, well, I've had communications with folks on the Highway Commission that talked to the new highway, or the RDOT director, that said, this is, if we send a request, it will get done.
I have to, so I agree.
Yep.
Good, very good. Okay. If there are no further comments, please call the roll.
Directors Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Mayor, can I, one quick question, if this does get approved, I'd like to have a discussion at that point, because now you're going to be reorienting parking and meters. I'd like to have a discussion at that point to maybe getting rid of meters 100% at that point.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so whenever that comes back to us, just put that in your head, okay?
Okay, thank you. Go to item 6.
Item 6 is an ordinance amending the 2025 operating budget and appropriating funds for carryovers and encumbrances from the 2024 operating budget. Chief Financial Officer Andy Richards will address this item.
Okay, this is an annual thing that we do. The fiscal policy of the city is all encumbrances lapse at the end of the fiscal year, so everything that was appropriated or encumbered in the budget but wasn't spent by the end of the year, it lapses, and then these things can be brought back to the board and be reappropriated for the next budget year for 2025. So that's what our policy is. We accumulated the items that were done, the encumbrances. We also refer to those as carry forwards in these materials. Those are actual POs issued. So there's typically contracts or a commitment to purchase goods or services already issued in that. That totaled, let's see, about $7.4 million of the total $11 million that we're asking to reappropriate. The other $3.6 million is budget requests to carry over funds to be used in the 25 budget for particular departments that had still remaining budget available in 24. So in order to bring this item to you, I knew it was important to get financial information in front of you. So that's why we went ahead and did a December 31, 2024 board financial report, even though we still haven't technically closed the books yet. But, as I indicated in my email to you, I felt like the timeliness was more important than definitive accuracy. So we went ahead and did that. And then also, I wanted to show you in another email to you about, keeping up with where we're projected to land as far as fund balances for our 4 operating funds. And so I sent that to you as well to make sure that we know, if we're going to reappropriate some of these funds in the 25 budget, what does that look like to us at the end? So there were some timing things there. I think if you saw the 24 financials that we put out last week, we ended up a lot better than what we had budgeted for. And so, that's a great thing. But then there were some unfinished things that needed to get done, and that's what's on this list tonight. The good thing is, we're still ahead of what we projected. We're not asking you to appropriate everything that we basically saved in 24, but the things that we're committed to doing. And so that's what was on the list that's attached. And so this item, this ordinance, is an appropriation to reappropriate these budgeted things from 24 and put them in the 25 budget so that we can go ahead and continue on with that work. I'll stop there and I'll answer whatever questions you guys have.
Thank you. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicated.
Okay. Need a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Need a second, please.
Second.
Okay. Any board comments? Director Neil Martin.
I think we need to take a look at this. I understand what this is. We've approved it every year, but I think we really have to take a look at water and sewer and the carryovers and the carry forward, the encumbrances and carryovers for water and sewer. If you look at that, if you look at the financials that Andy sent to us, we're at a 95% estimated debt service coverage. We were at 108 in 23.
Yes.
We're at and that led to where we were in 24 led to a water rate increase because we've got to satisfy 110% of our debt service ratio. So I think approving this, specifically those items for water and sewer, drives us further in the hole. I do want to talk about that 95% once we get to the administrative forum or the executive session, whatever, the thing at the end where I can talk about whatever I want. This is a problem. This will be a problem. To me, this says water rate increase. I don't want it. So I think we need to pause and take a look at this before we approve anything, especially for water, or especially for utilities. So I'm going to be a no vote. Okay, yes, I make a motion to table.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to table.
Just, if you motion table, it's going to come back to the next meeting. So you want to have a discussion in the next study session? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, we need to have a study session to talk about this and what the impact is. And I think we need finalization of some of these numbers. We've got to figure out, are there alternatives to cover this debt service ratio? You know, we've made a move to not take fees from credit cards. There's other things. We have made more money from the water rate increase, and I want to find out how much that is from when we enacted them to end of the year. I want to see what that dollar is. But we have got to look at that before we can pass these things on. So we've got to have some sort of study session. This is a water rate increase. That's what this is. I don't. I would say there's no urgency around it. It doesn't necessarily have to be next meeting.
And is there any financial reasons we have to do this month?
Well, some of these POs are contractual commitments, and there could be things that are on order, in process, things that are, there's a long list in there, but the encumbrances are, the city's already committed to purchasing these things. It just didn't get it done in 24.
I'm more concerned about the carry forward.
Sure. But that's the only issue is someone's like, I need to get this done. Like we try to do this as soon as we can after year end and collect all these things and nail it down and get it in here because some people are needing to make these purchases.
So are my concerns valid? What I'm saying up here, am I off base?
About what specifically? About the debt service coverage?
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing you can do about debt service coverage for 2024 at this point.
So,
but yeah, these
will hurt.
These will count as if these things occur in 2025, these will count as expenses, and they'll be 2020. They will be counted as part of the net revenues available for debt service, and they will be part of that.
For 25.
For 25. If these things happen as planned, if the expenses are incurred, they'll be counted in 25.
So it's hitting 25. I still think we need to understand what our water rate increases how they've impacted us, and before we make any decisions on spending in 25. And while we figure out what's going on with 24.
It's about we got about a $5 million boost in revenue from the water increase that was passed in July. It was implemented in the August billing.
Okay.
Started collecting in September. So that's we've got about 3 or 4 months in there because we've actually accrued, if you see the numbers that I've put in there, we've actually accrued even unbilled revenue.
Then how is our estimated annual net revenues less than what it was last year? I mean, I know that's not finalized, but that's when I passed this rate increase, or when this board passed the rate increase, the expectation was, okay, we were concerned that 24 may not get to 110, but I thought as I'm looking at the numbers for 1 month, I'm like, we're going to make it.
You're talking about net revenue?
You're
talking about the 18,700?
18,707, yeah.
That's because our costs have increased $10 million from last year. Well, not 10, 7.
Is that the 57,990 to 51,732?
Right. I mean, we've talked about the cost increases that we've, when we did this discussion back in July. I mean, We're
Yeah.
we're being impacted by inflation from all directions.
Right. Yeah, I want to hold off on this till the next board meeting, which would mean we would need to talk about it in our study session next week. In 2 days.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So make a motion to put on Tuesday's agenda.
I make a motion to
Table.
to table this till the
March 4th.
March 4th
We'll have to deal with it.
regular meeting, and then also to have this as a discussion item on the February 25th study session.
Does it make sense, and I'll ask Andy this also, does it make sense to separate the carry forwards from the carryovers? Because the carryovers are the ones that deal with the encumbrances and contracts that are already in place, we are already obligated to. Those are expenses that we're already incurring and could frankly incur late fees and penalties and such if we're
The
late on payment.
carryovers are a request to carry over the
Finish the
budget for
project
20,
and start it.
it's not, we haven't necessarily made any commitment, haven't sent a supplier a PO or anything. Or contract, so yes. I mean,
Does it make sense to separate the two?
Yeah.
Can I see that here?
There's a Schedule A and a B. The B is the encumbrances, and the A is the carryovers. The carryovers are the requests to spend budget.
Carry forwards are 7.3 million, and
Those are the POs that have been issued.
carry forwards.
Yes.
I thought carry forward was obligations.
They are.
Well, what?
I'm still for tabling it for the next voting meeting and then discussing at our next study session on Tuesday.
I mean, to Jeff's point, I mean, we're going to have the vote, the vote's going to be what it's going to be. But to Jeff's point, I think it's worth emphasizing, as was stated very plainly in the memo, carry forwards or encumbrances, whichever term you wish to use, are legal obligations that we entered into in 2024, and it was just not completed or service not delivered by December 31st, 2024. The request being to use money that we already budgeted in 2024 to pay the obligations in calendar year 2025. So with respect, what logical or reasonable position or even attainable position are you going to change on encumbrances between the 20 today versus 4 days from now or 2 weeks from now? Like, those are legal obligations that carry forwards / encumbrances.
I want to know the impact that they have, separated out.
To what end? We have to pay them.
I'm not saying we're not.
Director Kemp.
Andy, would you be safe to say that if 2024 is a year that we failed the bond covenant and we have encumbrances that are going to go to that budget, would it not make sense to leave the failure back on the 2024 fiscal budget versus carrying it into the 2025 fiscal budget? In other words, if I've understood this, we're saying we didn't meet our ratio that we wanted, but then if you don't approve this, then my understanding is you're bringing it forward versus leaving it in the back. Is that, I mean, or?
Technically, you're right. I mean, you know, these are, you can deny these things theoretically, but like we said, we're talking about them specifically to the encumbrances. I mean, these are contractual commitments that we've made. So legally, you're bound to the encumbrances. I think the carryovers are another thing that if you want to go in and say, do we need to do this? I mean, most of these things are, you know, maintenance, capital type items. That's what typically ends up on these lists. We typically don't bring over operating expenses. They'll stay back in, you know, you didn't incur it, you don't need it. These are things that we've been trying to get done. Somebody needs a dump truck, or we need to fix whatever backhoe. That's what usually is on here. I think if you looked at the water and sewer items, that's a lot of what that is repair and maintenance work that didn't get finished in '24. You know, it's so, and a lot of those things were, you know, some of it's because we ordered things, and, you know, it takes a while to get some of this, you know, equipment type stuff delivered. So if you said, no, we're not gonna reappropriate this, then we're telling people, don't deliver this stuff that we've ordered, and deals off. And there may be actual signed contracts to some of these things, maybe not all of them, but typically a PO is viewed by a vendor as a commitment to purchase.
Who approved these POs? Who approves it?
Who approves it?
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't heard a word about any commitments for POs for the excess money.
the POs are issued by the departments.
Okay, but who approves it?
Well, you approve the budget. So they're appropriated in the budget in '24, and then we go out and procure this stuff.
I mean, anybody can read on the screen right now the list of encumbrances, and it looks like they are all water and sewer operating, and they almost all relate to supply chain issues, repair issues, or parts, vendor waiting on new dumpster, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, like, this is not things that I would think would be viewed as controversial, regardless of the individual level of information a board member may or may not have. This is, we've voted directly or indirectly on all of these things.
So Andy, the column on the far left, does that correspond with the number and like the line item numbers in our book, our big budget book?
Yes.
Okay.
The first set is the budget program, and the next set is the actual budget line item.
So in the middle, under object, so for Director Katsavis, if you want to go through your big budget book they gave us, you can look up each individual one.
This is the fund department, this is the object.
I think I need reading glasses.
Well, I mean, we have a motion on the table. Do you mind restating, Madam Clerk, what the motion is?
I have a question.
Oh.
I'm waiting for my turn.
Go ahead, Director Settle.
Thank you. So let me just try to understand this. Director Martin's asking too. Attachment B has POs already issued to that work, correct?
That's correct.
So if I look on this list, for example, the very bottom 2, 4, 6 is roof repairs from the 2023 hailstorm that we will turn around and get, it's on the screen, we'll get reimbursement for.
Yep, and we have a contract for that. Okay. We're already contractually committed
so
to
everything in attachment B already got PO'd. Everything in attachment A, we haven't sent a PO out, we haven't done anything else.
That's correct.
Okay. So back to the initial ordinance, 7.4 million is PO'd that he wants to carry from 2024 to 2025. Is that correct, Andy?
Yes.
And attachment A, the 3.654 million, is work that they want to move into 2025, but has not been PO'd. Correct?
That's correct.
So to your point, Neil, and to everybody else's point, maybe the other compromise is we approve B because it's already been PO'd, and some of it's, if you look through the B list, you can see a lot of roof repairs.
And can I point out that in the ordinance, we split it up by fund.
Yep.
And we also split it up between encumbrances and carryovers. So if you looked in there, the appropriation for water and sewer operations for carryovers is only $15,000.
I mean, 1.69 million of the PO'd is for the airport.
It's for what?
It's for the airport. It's right there. 284,500 is for a roof repair. 270 is for a roof repair. 182 is for roof repair. 235 is for roof repair. I'm seeing Dale Crampton, I know that's a roof repair. 435 is a roof repair. So maybe part of this equation should have been, here's the stuff we're going to get reimbursed out of that what did I say, excuse me? Out of the 7.4, we're going to get reimbursed some of the dollars back because it's from the insurance funds.
It's already been counted. It's been counted in 2024 as an insurance proceed claim.
But then you're asking us to move the money to 2025 to spend.
Yep.
So, but the proceeds are already sitting there to cover that. So that's a net zero, in essence, right?
Yes.
I think that's part of the confusion. I'm helping out. So maybe the compromise is we approve attachment B, and then let's discuss attachment A at a future date. Is that a compromise with everybody?
Or would you be interested in voting on the ordinance as written?
To me, if I was going to do anything, I'm not going to talk to my buddy Neil. He's got a motion table. I would take out the first whereas clause on the ordinance and only approve, attachment B, and then attachment A, put it to a future study session.
And I would be okay with that. I mean, in looking at,
that's the stuff we'll talk about right there.
yeah.
That's the stuff we'll talk about.
The challenge is most of that water and sewer stuff is already, we're already down the road on it. I just feel it's going to, we're going to be fighting with this again at some point this year.
I mean, I don't have a problem if you want to withdraw your table, and I'll put one out there, and we'll do B and table A. But you got a motion to table in a second, so that's on the table now.
I pull it.
I make a motion to amend item 6 and to remove the second whereas clause that does the carryover for attachment A. We'll only approve attachment B tonight.
Second.
That'll work. Okay, thank you.
And after that, and then request that attachment A will be a future study session for us to discuss.
Second.
Okay. We have an amendment. Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll on the amendment?
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
No.
George Katsavas.
No.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Okay. Okay, now we need to vote on the ordinance as amended.
Directors Martin,
No.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
No.
George Katsavas.
No.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to item number 7.
Number 7 is an ordinance amending the 2024 operating budget and appropriating funds for the former city administrator's severance pay. Mr. Richards will address this item.
This is just really a technical matter. It doesn't impact the fund balance from 2024 that we've actually already accrued the severance package that was implemented back in December. The issue was the action occurred after we finalized the budget for 2024. And so I'm just asking for an official appropriation to go along with your resolution to separate service from the previous city administrator so that I can show that I'm counting this, even though we're going to pay it out over 12 months, that the action actually occurred in December. And so accounting-wise, I'm accruing the whole $235,000 in the severance in the 24 numbers. And that was actually reflected in the board report that was issued last week. So this is just kind of a technical matter to have official appropriation for that severance.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Need a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Okay, any further comments? Director Christina Casavage.
So we may not have to pay him out all of this if he gets a job, correct? we're not obligated, our payments stop.
I don't think that's the case.
Oh, I think that's definitely the case, is,
I don't remember seeing
that's
that.
not how I
but-
read the contract. I read the contract was that if he gets another job making like 100,000 or more, we don't have to pay him anymore. Or was that in the modification we never approved? Has he signed off on anything that says if he accepts this, he waives the right to pursue legal recourse for his termination?
This is just an actually put his employment agreement, the termination provisions in the employment agreement.
I mean, there are terms on file, like there's no, I mean, I imagine there's not a great deal of need to speculate about this. I mean, there's a contract that, I mean, we don't have it in front of us tonight, but somewhere in the Human Resources Department, there's a contract that had his signature on it that was in force at the time we terminated him. And so we have to abide by what was in force when we took the step that we did.
Well, you know, I think I'd like to see another copy of that before I vote on this, because that original contract, I mean, I don't know who wrote that. It's almost as if we let him write it himself. That's why I was trying to make modifications. I mean, to me, it's just bad business to pay someone out when they haven't waived the right to pursue legal avenues in the future.
Colby, can we do that?
I need to understand the question. Can we do what?
Can we change the contract or do something contrary to
Well,
the existing contract?
if we're trying to modify the contract, it would require both parties to agree to modify it. And
If I may, I think that's not what she's asking. Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
I mean, maybe we say, if you want your severance, you can sign this. If not, then we'll go to court. Would that be reasonable?
Well, I don't know about reasonable. I mean, you can certainly say it. And I don't know what the contract says either. I mean, if the contract had some contingent component to it about, you know, executing some release, then the contract says what it says. But if it doesn't, you know.
Because this was all during the time that we were discussing modifications, so that's why I'm a little unsure. Maybe what I'm thinking of is a modification, but I thought there was something in there that said if he got another job at a certain threshold, payments will stop.
That's what LeBon proposed before, and then it was never accepted, remember, in executive session?
Because his contract was modified a couple times.
Yeah, LeBon did all that.
But
remember, and then brought it to the board.
Yes, Director Kemp.
Colby, if I could, just want to ask the question the way I heard Director Christina Casavas ask, and I want to re-ask maybe the way I heard it in my head. Is there a way that if we are issuing these funds, as stated here in this ordinance, that we can ask for a document to be signed to waive his right of further legal action against the city of Fort Smith?
You can certainly ask that. If that was not part of the contract, then the other party doesn't have to accept it. I mean, if the contract says the city's going to pay X amount upon severance, that's what the contract says. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at it in several months, but you know, those questions can easily be answered. All we got to do is get the contract.
And then one other follow-up question, just because I was not sitting here at the dais at the time, but had the thought. Was the termination with or without cause in technicalities?
It was contractually without cause.
That's correct. The with cause was a very narrow provision in that contract, so I think it was without cause.
That was my follow-up question. Why was it not with cause, or why?
Because the contract said with cause.
basically, he had to be arrested.
Yeah, convicted of a felony.
An arrestable crime.
Yeah, a very narrow set of circumstances to be terminated with cause.
I mean, frankly, the big takeaway I would suggest is that, you know, our previous permanent city administrator had a contract that was very favorable to him when it came to things like severance and cause and things of that nature. And as we walk down the road of hiring a new permanent city administrator, I would strongly suggest that we make sure that we do not have a contractual situation again like what existed in December of 2024.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comment? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas. Christina Katsavas.
No.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Let's reconvene. And we will go to item number 8.
Item number 8 is an ordinance approving a local business to apply to the state's Alcohol Beverage Control Division for a private club and retail beer license.
You find them?
Mr. Richards will address this item.
Yeah, so we had a request for a liquor permit in the planning office, and they are applying for a private club license with the state alcohol and beverage controls. Part of their application, they need this proposed ordinance approved by the board to go with it. That's part of the state law that the city board needs to approve their application to the state. So this is Zona Zero Event Center. The business name is Law Zona Zero, operating at 3321 South 66th Street. And I think that's all. I'll answer whatever questions I can on this.
Okay, thank you. Any citizens' comments, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Need a
So
second,
moved.
please.
Second.
Okay, we got a second.
Yeah.
Any board comments? Please call the roll.
Directors Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Is this the church? Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 9.
So it's the old Eagles building? Thank you.
Item 9 is a resolution authorizing an engineering services agreement with Hawkins Weir for a consent decree capacity improvement project. Lance McAvoy, Director of Water Utilities, will address this item and answer questions from the board.
Good evening. This project, so you'll remember that we did Basin 10 and 14 Phase 1. That was ARPA funds that financed that. McKee Engineering, or McKee Construction completed that project. We are currently in Phase 3. That is to take care of the SSOs near the Kelly Ball Fields. Those will be completed in the next month or so. But in between those two is what is called Phase 2. The scope will address 48 manhole rehab and replacement. It will replace approximately 800 linear feet and increase it to a 12-inch pipe. This existing pipe is an 8 to 10 inch, so we're upsizing it. There will be approximately 3,300 linear feet of 15, 18, and 20-inch pipe that will be upsized to 24, and there will be an additional 2,100 linear feet of 15, 18, and 20-inch pipe that will be upsized to 30-inch pipe. This is a capacity project. The engineering agreement for the design is $558,300. The design is expected to take 240 days, and it is being funded by the 5/8% sales and use tax. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Any citizens' comments?
We have Larry Yancey to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Any board comments? Please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rego. It's approved, 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 10.
Item 10 is a resolution authorizing an engineering services agreement with Half & Associates related to the 2017 SSA remedial measures consent decree project. Mr. McAvoy will address this item.
So we have part of this already designed by Half Engineering. This is back when my predecessor informed engineering firms to use engineering judgment before we had the ruling on all 4s and 5s had to be included. So this is just to finish up what was not done. This is approximately 37 different line segments and 36 manholes. It will take 180 days, and it's for $365,485. again, from the sales and use tax. If you look at page 16, I believe it's 168 in your packet, we actually included a legend with the what was designed is kind of the orange-red, and what needed to be designed on the line segments are in green. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Any citizens' comments?
None indicating.
Motion to adopt a resolution?
So moved.
Need a
Second.
Okay. Any board comments? Director Kemp.
Just a comment. I would just say, Lance, I love it. If we could coordinate with Josh, even just telling the story through social media when I hear completion of a project, I think sometimes there's been some comments that have been shared with me like, well, we don't ever complete things. And I think when we cross some milestones, I'd love to make sure that we tell the story.
Any further comments? Please call the roll.
Directors Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 11.
This is a resolution authorizing an engineering services agreement with Burns & McDonnell Engineering related to asset management, hydraulic modeling, and flow monitoring to assist with prioritizing consent decree capital projects. Mr. McAvoy will address this item.
So one of the things that we are looking at that's in the negotiations with DOJ, before we would do a sub-basin, we do the assessment, as Director Martin really did a great job summarizing tonight. We would assess it, we would design it, we would build it. And the problem is it didn't really impact SSOs that were occurring in areas that were not in that sequence. We have finished all of our SSA work, and one of the things that we're looking at doing is utilizing a asset management model that looks at the consequence of failure and the risk of failure. So, we've had some emergency contracts where we've had a sinkhole. We've had to do an emergency contract, and they get in there, and we've had to bring change orders. Well, this allows us to look at those before the sinkholes happen, and also to prioritize where we're seeing SSOs, dry weather SSOs, wet weather SSOs, and prioritize those, and then also group those by the type of repair. This, again, is to help reduce the overall cost of the projects that we're looking at. In addition to that, which DOJ and EPA have both said is a sound method, it's been used in other consent decrees, and going forward, we'd like to do that. The other aspect of this is we are still working on our hydraulic model. That tells us where we have pinch points that could cause wet weather SSOs, and to calibrate that, because there are some areas in the city where we're having predicted SSOs, but we're not really seeing them. We need to do some additional flow monitoring to calibrate it, and this whole contract does that. It is for $1,126,233, and it will take 313 days. And the final part is one of the things that DOJ and EPA have said that they do not like is the reports that we have been submitting for the last 10 years. And they have given us some input. We're working on getting the old one done, but we have also asked Burns and Mac to help us with a new report layout that is easier for the public to read, as well as DOJ and EPA to see what those milestones are that we're meeting. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any citizens' comments?
None indicating.
Okay, motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego.
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Kemp.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to item 12, the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 15 items remaining listed on this evening's consent agenda. The first is a resolution approving an agreed order to resolve a civil action Item B is a resolution approving automobile and property insurance coverage for 2025 to 26. 12C is a resolution authorizing acquisition of an easement for water transmission line project. 12D is a resolution accepting the offer made by property owners related to an easement for water line transmission project. Item 12E has been withdrawn by staff from consideration for tonight. 12F is a resolution authorizing change order number 3 to the construction contract for water line relocation project for Highway 255. 12G is a resolution authorizing amendment number 1 to engineering services contract related to water line relocation for Highway 255. 12H is a resolution authorizing amendment number 2 to engineering services contract related to water line relocation for Highway 255. 12I is a resolution authorizing acquisition of easements for Highway 255 utility relocation project. 12J is a resolution authorizing purchase of a forklift according to the equipment replacement program for solid waste services. 12K is a resolution authorizing purchase of a star screener according to the equipment replacement program for solid waste services. 12L is a resolution authorizing purchase of a backhoe according to equipment replacement program for solid waste services. 12M is a resolution authorizing purchase of a haul truck according to the equipment replacement program for solid waste services. 12N is a resolution authorizing purchase of a cart delivery vehicle according to equipment replacement program for solid waste services. 12O is a resolution authorizing purchase of a service truck according to the equipment replacement program for solid waste services. And 12P is a resolution authorizing a non-residential solid waste agreement with Ozark Dumpster Service, LLC.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Administrator, I'd like to pull or discuss item A, make a comment on that. Okay, any other items for discussion? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to ask for approval of items B through P, with the exception of 12E.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, motion to adopt those items with the
If I may, we do have 2 individuals to speak on item 12B.
yes, okay,
First being Crystal Cadelli.
okay. I'm sorry, you're recognized, Ms. Cadelli.
I mean, obviously, we need insurance for our properties, but what I would like to say is I think that we need to purge some of our properties that we are not utilizing. It just causes us to spend more taxpayer money, and as they sit empty, then they become dilapidated and need, more work for remodeling. So, for example, the Bose building, it's in a prime location. It would be great for multi-uses. I think that property should be sold off. I also believe, like I said before, the Acme Brick property, prime location, I think that we do need to fix the flooding portion of it. But I think that we need to sell the rest of the property off and not entertain any new parks at this point. And we don't need to just leave it sitting. It could be money that we're utilizing in the bank. And that's really all I had to say about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you much. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Chris Cadelli.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what my wife just spoke to as far as any properties that don't have immediate use or anything, that's designated for those properties. The board should, analyze those properties and take a look at selling those off to help, cut costs for stuff that we just really aren't using. And then I do hope that we do get a chance to talk on item A. Misuse of taxpayer funds is a big deal, and the citizens should get an opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you.
That's all on 12B.
Okay, thank you.
Does Mr. Murray want to
Mr. Murray.
speak to B?
I'd like to respond to your comment because that's spot on, and I'm going to share with you an example of what we do. In 21, the city covered all of its, and this is to your request, Mr. Martin, covered all the street lights and the light boxes for such. That was the particular year the board, we went with the traveler's insurance. They had $100,000 deductible, so we were going through when we saw where it's 100, right at 100 or less at any one location, and we've got spread of risk with tornadoes hitting different, maybe one part, but not all. So that particular year, we pulled all the stoplights out. And back in 21, the rate was at a lower rate, but in that year, it saved $46,714. In 22, $45,600. In 24, $62,400. And this year, we recommend you continue to self-insure that because of spread of risk. And it saves with the surcharge they have to do because of whatever, it's over $80,000. So significant money every year by going through the schedule and saying, we don't need to be insuring that one. We've got spread of risk, and you got to look at the premium. If it's $86,000 to cover $24 million worth of traffic lights, we're going to have a claim maybe every third or fifth year, but we're going to have that premium every year. So we recommend you allow us to continue for the schedule we work on with Andy and Ann Creek Killer, that it not include the stoplights. Even with a $10,000 deductible, there might be some money to be had if something happens, but we've got to look at that premium that we're paying every single year, and we know since 21, I think a vehicle ran into a traffic box a month or two ago, but that's it. So we've got lots of support if you need to. Mr. Martin, I told you I wanted to do a study. I can put it in writing if you'd like. But I wanted the young lady to know that if you do go through that with a fine-tooth comb, I know that Ann and Andy ask each department to do an assessment of the property in their domain, and they are pretty clear about what they want covered.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murray? Okay, thank you, Philip. This time I'll make a comment on item.
Let's vote on B.
Okay. Let's go ahead and vote on the consent agenda with the exception of A and E. Okay, need a motion to adopt all consent agenda items with those exceptions.
We already have the
Got
motion.
that? Do we have a second?
Second.
Already have the second.
We have a second.
I second it.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. Call the roll.
Directors Christina Getsavis,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
I'm sorry, muted. Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Getsavis.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on item A. For years, understand this, for years, our city has supported community-based organizations that provide invaluable services to all of the residents. These partnerships have strengthened our community and improved lives and fostered meaningful progress. Recently, concerns have been raised regarding the legality of providing direct funding to these organizations. Excuse me. While we have always acted in good faith and with best interests of our city at heart, we acknowledge that state law presents limitations that were not previously brought to our attention. It is telling that only now, after years of successful community investment, that these issues have been raised by those who seek to undermine our efforts rather than improve them. Moving forward, we will explore all available legal avenues to continue to support these organizations that make our city stronger. If adjustments are required, we'll make them. What we will not do is allow political gamesmanship to weaken our commitment to the people and programs that serve Fort Smith. Mercy Hospital has spent almost $180 million in this city. And when they call on us to be there, we should be there. Our Boys and Girls Club serve thousands. We should be there. We should be there. Our United Way serves thousands. And when they call on us, we should be there. We're going to be calling on them to assist with rates, tax increases. We're going to be wanting them to support us. Let's be mindful of how we treat them. Thank you very much. At this time we will go to, at this time, entertain a motion to adopt item A.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 12A.
I'll second it, but I believe there's citizens' comments, Mayor.
Okay, citizens' comments, please.
Yes. First being Crystal Cadelli.
So I want to start off by saying that this is not a political statement for me. This is about the taxpayers' money and how we choose or not choose to give to charities. It should be up to us and not the government. So I'm curious to how the board, auditors, and city attorneys overlooked the mayor's unlawful expenditures. This situation highlights the ongoing dysfunction in our city leadership. If an ordinary citizen were to commit such acts, they would face prosecution and be required to repay the taxpayers who are the real victims. I'm increasingly frustrated with the board's lack of diligence in verifying information before making decisions and approvals. I'm calling for a thorough audit of the mayor's budget since taking office, as well as an audit of the water department. The community has lost trust that this board knows how to manage our money. And I think that it is a reasonable request. If there is nothing mismanaged, then an audit shouldn't be an issue. And I really urge that you guys do the right thing for the citizens. You're asking a lot of us by increasing taxes, by increasing water, by increasing sewer, and by increasing building permits. Everything has been increased. And it goes to show in the tax statements, if you look online, your tax revenue is decreasing, which means your population is decreasing. So if you want to keep the city beautiful and thriving, then you need to do the right thing for it.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Chris Cadelli.
I'm going to echo that statement. This is not a political issue. This is just a right and wrong issue. Mismanagement of taxpayer funds, no matter how righteous you may think it may be, is wrong. And that wrong has to be righted. It's ironic that we're here addressing this tonight at a time when we have, DOJ on a national level finding all kinds of mismanagement and misuse of taxpayer funds under some of the same guises as a charity. You don't get to rob us, the citizens, of their opportunity to be charitable in the manner they wish to be. So this is a microcosm, right here in Fort Smith of what's going on nationally. And I love the fact that what's going on nationally is starting to is starting to flow out, and we're seeing some big changes, and I think, it's past time. I think this is a great reminder of how important the Director of Internal Audit is, the watchdog for the city and for the citizens. That role needs to be filled. Seems like a few months ago we had a previous director said they couldn't find a good fit, and I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but we do need, I'm sure that a city the size of Fort Smith can find an internal director for internal audit. And it does trouble me that a concerned citizen had to dig all this up. This should have been found by one of the directors, one of the city attorneys. Somebody should have seen this years ago, however long it's been going on. This should have been vetted out. And I'm not saying it's just only been going on for this mayor. It may have been going on for mayors previous, and we need to figure out how much money has been wasted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I assure you.
And last we have Dane Williams.
I do want to make mention, Mayor, I am the liaison between Baker Tilly and the city of Fort Smith, and I know that Baker Tilly is actively, from an audit perspective, Mr. Williams, you can come up. Baker Tilly, from an audit perspective, is actively working with our internal audit staff, reviewing what they've been doing, helping making a plan for 2025. I will be meeting with Baker Tilly in the next few weeks to go over where they are in their assessment and what they've observed so far. So in terms of internal audit, continuing on, it is, and I'm interfacing with them.
I'm going to just let you know that I'm very disappointed in you, Mayor. You had the opportunity to go ahead and own up to something, and you couldn't even take credit for it. This is political, but it's not the politics you think. It's the kingdom of heaven's politics. And you can smirk and laugh, and that's okay. But when you mismanage little things, it tells me you mismanage big things, and that's why we're in the shape we're in. And really, you don't have to apologize to me or any man. But there is accountability that you need to look at. And it's called integrity and character and courage. And you lack the courage to take ownership. And I hope you do that on this side of heaven. I'm also disappointed that, no one mentioned that our brother that passed away in this community that has served so faithfully with you. No one even brought that up. We didn't even talk about him.
I was going to bring it up at the end. I have a picture.
That's going to be brought up.
Well, you know what? The beginning would have been nice. So, there's a lot to be said and a lot to deal with here. And I hope we can get together in a community and actually honor God again and serve Him at a very high level. But this city doesn't belong to Jesus. Because if it did, we could take ownership and know that He's got it all covered and we're not worried about politics. But I don't come for left or right. I come for Him. And we're in a Joshua 5 moment. And the sword's drawn. And He's going to divide things out. And it's very clear the division that's been had here tonight. And I do think that someone needs to be accountable. And apparently,
Thank you.
Apparently you're going to have to be the one to be accountable. I had 4 seconds.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, we need to vote on item 12A.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Wait, do we not have opportunity to speak?
If you'd like to, please.
Well,
we made a motion.
Yeah.
Is second.
Okay. I think one of the things that we've got to make sure, and I know I'm going way out of order here. How did we get this far? What do we do about it now? I think I think we need to look at some of that funding as it looks in the budget in 2025 and maybe carve some of that back out. in order to be able to not only make sure that we don't do this going forward, but we also have protections in there for this mayor and any other mayor in terms of where some of these dollars go. So I would ask the board to, maybe we need to relook at that mayor's budget, pull some of that money back, and make sure that we've got a narrow definition around where that money goes.
And I would say, out of all the mayors that this city has had, that has never been the case. Again, I point out to you, if this would have been known, none of this would have happened.
Well, and I think that's my question is how did that happen? And how do we...
That I can't tell you.
Right, and how do we...
It goes through a process. Let
Right.
me explain to you.
Right.
A request comes to the office, and we submit that based on, say, the Boys and Girls Club, United Way, we submit that. And that's where it's gone. And then they approve it. Again, I'm going to recommend, certainly we put in some checks and balances, you know. And so these things will be taken care of. Is there any other comments?
I mean, I think we need to look at it. The 7 of us need to look at it. Are we still in voting mode?
Yes.
Okay. I vote yes on the resolving civil action.
Rigo?
No.
Good?
No.
Kemp?
Yes.
George Katsavas? Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will go to the officials forum. And at this time, I will mention the loss of one of our favorites, Pastor Don Hutchins, longtime pastor of Evangel Temple and served as a director on the City Board of Directors as well. And so he will be missed. The services will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Evangel Temple. Okay. Director Neil Martin, any comments?
Yes, Mayor. Kind of the spirit of what we talked about earlier around encumbrances, carryovers, those things. We as a board need to look at our debt service coverage and how we can make up the difference in our shortfall about our debt service coverage in 24 and then 25. What can we legally do to make up the difference that we've gotten from our tentative or preliminary year-end statement? I think I want to look look further at how much additional revenue came in from water rates since they were increased in July, I believe, and how that affects what we've got going on. I want to see if there's anything that we can do in order to adjust that. Secondarily, I'm always interested in numbers and some of the things that Talk Business and Politics put out. Last week was they put out their jobs numbers for 2024 and kind of comparing where we sit versus various last year, and then also they compare job numbers as it relates to the high in terms of employed people in the city of in the Fort Smith Metro in June of 2006. So there's a little over 124,000 people were employed. In December, there were 117,600 that were employed in December. I would like to, and in comparing December 24 to December 23, we're up 1.3% in terms of jobs in in the Fort Smith Metro, but that puts us behind Jonesboro, who is at 4%, Northwest Arkansas, which is at 3.3%, and Central Arkansas, which is 3.1%. I would like to maybe have the Chamber of Commerce, maybe Tim Allen, come and talk about jobs in the city of Fort Smith, primarily the city of Fort Smith, and strategies that we can do to start to lower that gap between high of 2006, and that was Whirlpool left shortly after that, and how we can start to close that gap in terms of jobs, wages, all those kinds of things. So at some point, I'd like to have Chamber of Commerce visit with us and talk with us about opportunities. I know we've got the foreign military sales, but what else can we do around that? So that's what I'd like to discuss.
Director Settle.
Sure, Mayor, thank you. Andy, you still here? I got a couple of questions, Andy. You beat me to where I was going to go, so I want to tell you thank you. Andy, in the 2024-2025 budget, how is the 5/8 sales tax for water and the consent decree? Is that a separate line item? It's not in the budget. It's not in the water.
It's a separate fund.
But
it's not part of the operating budget.
So it's not counted towards our debt coverage, is it?
No, because it can't be used for debt service. Can't be used for debt payments. It's strictly for capital for consent decree.
Okay. How long do we have in 2025 to go back and modify the 2024 budget legally?
I don't know that there's any.
Can I get
I don't know if there's a time frame. I don't think there's a legal.
I'd like to get, I'm not asking for tonight, but I'd like to get a legal opinion when the latest we can do that.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I'd like to get an updated budget, because when you look through our budget in 2025, the credit card fees are at $1.5 million. Obviously, starting in a couple of days, it's going to go back to the citizens. So I know there's going to be a couple $100,000, but I'd like to get a new operating budget, because it does affect the operator and water and sewer side, because you're going to pull probably 1.2 or 1.1 away from that. And so that will impact the debt service coverage in the 2025. So once March rolls around, I'd like to see if we can get an updated budget.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Sure.
To the board, I want to make a motion for a budget amendment. The 2025 budget amendment, I'd like to bring this up at the second meeting in March so people can think about it. I'd like to have the mayor's budget, the board's budget, the city administrator's budget, sustainability budget, and city clerk's budget all come out of the general fund, and the remaining, all the water, sewer, streets, and solid waste goes back to those departments, and those 5 budgets go strictly out of the general fund. I'll need a second. Nobody seconds, that's fine. But
what would that figure in dollar amount?
it's going to be about, total, it's going to be about $2 million to go back to all the other funds.
Per year?
Per year. But I want to do it for 2025 budget, and if I get a legal, I'll probably go back and do it for 2024. But I want to get the legal jargon. But I know we can do it for 2025 in the middle of it, and based on the information we got, I'm going to ask for those 5 budgets: mayor's, board, city administration, sustainability, and city clerks to go out of the general fund only.
So that goes back to some of the discussions we had around budget time.
Yep.
And I am in agreement with that.
Okay.
So I second that.
But I was going to give people time to think about it, so second meeting in March. And last thing, Mayor, I
don't see
pledge
that.
to serve with Dawn.
Yeah.
Andre, George, and myself had the pleasure to serve with Dawn.
We did.
And the reason I waited, because I knew I could hold it together, but Dawn will be missed. I call that the Board of 8. All 8 of us stayed together for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I sat next to him for 4 years. I sat across from him for 4
Well,
years.
he was at large at one time,
Sat for me for 4, sit across there for
and then
4.
he was the ward director, Ward 3?
Ward 3 for 4 years.
Yeah.
Dawn's going to be missed.
Good times.
Thank you. Director Christina Casavas.
Yes, I do have something to say. There is, I've been paying attention to what's been going on in Little Rock. There is a bill coming out of committee. It's House Bill 1445, And this is to essentially strip us of local control of short-term rentals. So, what we have here is a big company out of California, Airbnb, and they're lobbying really hard. And what was communicated to me was, how can we tell people what to do with their own property? And my response to that would be, we do that all the time through zoning. I mean, essentially, these are unregulated hotels. I don't want one of these in my neighborhood. And I understand, I get a lot of complaints, and there's been an uptick in that. And there was a gentleman I spoke with, and he said, there's 2 in my neighborhood. He said, there's one that rents for $350 a night. It's not rented that often. You get people in there maybe for a weekend, and they're usually pretty polite. He said, there's another one, they rent a room for $80 a night. There's trash everywhere. They're driving 100 miles an hour through our neighborhood, and, it's not a good deal. So I think maybe we could come up with some sort of, I'd like to eventually propose an ordinance to come up with some sort of solution where, maybe we can do some licensing, grandfather in some of the people who have already invested some money in this, but cap it. Other cities have done this. So I've been looking into this. Other cities have done this, and they've had success with it. The thing with these short-term rentals is what it leads to is you get out-of-state investors who start buying up properties to rent them out for short-term rentals. There's good money in it. It drives up the cost of housing, which we don't want. We don't want to end up in a similar situation like Northwest Arkansas. They have a real housing affordability problem there. But this bill is going to take our control away to do that. And we are the closest ones to our citizens. We should be the ones making these decisions, not Little Rock. Because Little Rock's, what this bill says is, it's the Wild West. It's a free-for-all. Do whatever you want, Put one up on every corner. And, that's not the kind of city I want to live in. I think we need some regulation around this to protect our citizens who do invest in their neighborhoods and their homes. And, I don't know if anyone else is getting some of the calls I've gotten about some complaints from the short-term rentals, the Airbnbs. But I do know that Airbnb has, and I think we all got packets as well, not really nice packets, but they're lobbying for this, and I think they have lobbied in Little Rock, and I think they've found some sympathetic ears. I don't know how this has ever gotten out of committee, but I think it'll be coming for a vote, so I just want everyone to be aware of that.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I can give Director Casavis and the board's information. So 1445 is a bill because the city of Bella Vista and one person has a disagreement on an Airbnb. And so the bill proposed everything you just talked about. The bill proposed would not allow any of that. It's pretty much the Wild West. You can't put caps. You can't put anything. The Arkansas Municipal League is working with the bill owner. It did get out of committee, but it has not ran through the House yet. There is opposition, but they're looking for some negotiations to allow for something. I think that the one thing they're trying to focus on is allowing cities the zoning rights, to keep the zoning rights so we can zone where they can be placed at. But that's kind of where it is right now. I just emailed y'all a legislative update. You get an email that I got from Municipal League of where some of the bills stand out, but that is the one you're talking about is the top bucket for most cities right now in the state.
In New York, they eventually got to the point, because people were coming in and buying up whole buildings, they eventually got to the point where they said, we're done with it. If you want to do one, it's a minimum 30-day stay. And I'm not saying we do anything that extreme, but it should be within our control, because, the argument is that the control is at the state level, but really it's California controlling what we're doing here in Fort Smith. And to my knowledge, they're not paying the 3% lodging tax. Would that be correct, Jeff?
They do remit taxes monthly. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. It's something that's been on my mind, because I have seen an uptick in communication from citizens that are really frustrated with having this in their neighborhood. And I think about it, and I think, what if this were my neighborhood? What if somebody next door to me is renting a room out for $50 or $60 or $80 a night, and people are leaving trash, and driving fast down our road. And so, I think that we should at least reserve the right. I don't like a lot of government overreach or regulation, but we should at least reserve the right should we need it at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Director George Kasavage.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Director Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. One, I'd like to make a motion that we would have the administration provide us a list of public properties or properties we've acquired or have purchased through all kinds of means, especially speaking with Ms. Deuster about properties that we're even having to maintain and mow, but it seems like we'll be doing this for a long, long time, and it's not a park. And I would love to see a list of properties that we have purchased, we're maintaining, with the potential of evaluating which of those can be sold. So that's one motion I have. I don't know if there's a second, but I'd like to.
I'll second that.
I'll do it on the mic second.
Okay. And then two, just a question as well. I have one more thing, but on two, we did get that email, and I know we talked about, I exchanged some emails with Acting Administrator Jeff Deeman about the Tier 1, and I asked what were the best practices. Do we have that on an agenda, or is the next step for the board to consider those Tier 1 candidates? Is that slated on an agenda?
There is a general discussion slated for the 25th study session. But yes, we do need to figure out something to move that process forward for the internal audit position.
So is it best then to just talk about this on the 25th and then place it on an agenda item? Or do we need a deadline and work backwards?
Well, the only deadline really is that the longer we take, the more likely it is that good candidates find different
Because out of that
positions.
tier, we had 4 good candidates. One had already been interviewed before, they said no to. But the other 4 are on there. If we don't interview these people in a timely manner, I think you lose the opportunity of gaining them. So I don't know, if we have them, I would like to see action. We've already talked about it. Is there an action step? Is that just us going to an executive session to do interviews?
I think Tuesday we need to talk about these vacancies that we have.
Can we call, will that be in an executive session then, or how do we get this ball going?
Tuesday would not be an executive session. It would just be a general discussion of how we move forward. And I think between now and then, we will come up with a recommendation as to what we do.
I just feel the plane stalling, and I'm like, we've got the people. We know who we need to start with. We need to start the process.
Yeah, I just to that point, and kind of to what was mentioned earlier, I'm not in any shape or form advocating Baker Tilly for the long haul. However, I do feel comfortable with those folks in the interim. They're sharp. I think they know what they're doing. I think we're in good hands with them. But you're 100% right.
You're going to lose them.
I want to move forward.
Yeah.
I want to move forward and try to fill that position as quickly as we can.
Because I think the elongated the process goes, the more we're going to run the risk of someone withdrawing their name from the application. Or, if they are sharp, being gainfully employed by somebody else. The final thing I would say is just making a formal announcement that, we've talked about Pastor Don Hutchins. His services are at Evangel Temple on Saturday at 2 p.m. And anyone who can't maybe make that in person, the Evangel Temple's YouTube page will be live streaming that. As I imagine, that'll be standing room only. And I would just say, I've known Don since I was a teenager, and I didn't. I'm sorry, I'm just going to share this. I think this is the place for it. I didn't grow up in church, and when I came to faith in high school, Don came. He wasn't my pastor. He came to speak at Partners in Christ, and delivered, even as a young man, one of the most powerful talks I've ever heard on Psalm 23, and things that just really meaningful. I was a 40-year-old man having lunch with Pastor Don to ask him if he thinks I should put my name in the hat to run for city director at Rolando's. I bought his lunch at Rolando's. And he said, Lee, the need is the call. Some things you just got to jump into. And he was so encouraging to me. And I said, Pastor Don, you gave a message when I was 15 years old about God comforting a man onto a horse. And that was the sword behind the knight's back, to help him on the horse. But it was an active thing. And he leaned over and he goes, I said that, didn't I? And I said, yes, you did. And I've watched you over the years. And in a day and age where pastors fail at the end of their life, and we are seeing this over and over and over again in the national scene, Pastor Don was a man who ended well. He ended faithful. And that is a rare breed in the United States of America and in the world. And I would tell you a verse that Don and I shared that day at lunch is Jeremiah 29:7, that we will seek the peace and the prosperity of the city to which we've been sent. I don't think I am strong enough, and I don't think anyone in here is strong enough to take this city out of the hands of Jesus. Pastor Don would tell you that Jesus has always had this city, and he always will. Thank you.
Very well said. Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Just because he sat next to me for 4 years, we had that opportunity, Pastor Don and I had the opportunity to share a whole lot. I remember a lot of times that we had very hard issues that we had to discuss and vote on. He would sit there and write Jesus on the palm of his hand. Sometimes we would sit there and we would touch and agree on things and pray, during board meetings. I don't have to tell anyone out there how good of a man Don was. He was my wife and our pastor for a couple of years after we had left our church in Spiro. But anyway, just wanted to give a little bit of praise and honor to a man that served the city board well. He served the community well, and he served God well.
Thank you, Director Rigo.
I certainly share the high thoughts for Pastor Hutchings. I did not know him very well. We did not have the chance to serve together. But in the times that I was able to spend with him and see him and interact with him, he was always, unceasingly positive and unfailingly kind. And he accomplished a lot of good in the community, both on the civic side and the spiritual health side. And he's going to certainly be missed, and leaves a big void and vacuum that we'll all be responsible for filling. But a very, very good man. And even though I knew him not to the extent that my colleagues did, even the sliver that I did know him was enriching to me. Unrelated, the other thing I wanted to mention was that, in this time that's characterized by heightened financial obligations, it's important, and we've heard people say it, it's important that we actually reduce spending and use taxpayer dollars in more efficient ways, and we can't just talk about it. And to that end, I've been working on something I'm calling the Fort Smith Curbing Unrestricted Taxpayer Spending Package. And I'm going to have this cuts package ready to be discussed no later than the March 4th board meeting. Have a little bit of work left to do, but this will make at least $3.6 million available for consent decree work. I'm going to be sharing the work with my colleagues, the public, the media, via social media for your review. And it's my hope that the cuts package could serve as a starting point for realistic spending changes in the way we do business. And of course, Director Settle even mentioned something earlier. And so just appreciate the consideration in the future on that, and thankful for everyone's time tonight.
Thank you. Outstanding work. Mr. Dingman?
No, sir.
Okay, no comments. At this time, we're going to go into executive session and make appointments to the Sebastian County Regional Solid Waste Management Board and officially name the acting city administrator. We're going to reconvene, and
We have a resolution.
I'm sorry.
Item 13.
Let's do the resolution, item 13.
I make a motion to approve item 13.
Thank you. Is there any?
I would like to make an amendment to item 13. So I would like to confirm the appointment of Jeff Dingman as acting city administrator and include a 7% pay increase while he is the acting city administrator.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the board?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Director Rigo? Yes. Okay. Are there any comments from the board? Entertain a motion to adopt the resolution. We got a second, no further comments. Please.
Do we have to vote on the amendment first?
Yes.
Vote on the amendment.
Directors Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
I guess it jumped off.
Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas?
Yes.
Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Yes.
Good? No, okay. Kemp,
Yes.
George Katsavas? Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we like to announce that Dwayne McDonald and Emily Ziegler have been appointed to the Sebastian County Regional Solid Waste Management Board. Need a motion to accept all appointments.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no further business. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.